Hey everyone, welcome back. So this is a fact that in 2026, working with AI as a developer is almost non-negotiable now. Every companies are now already expecting their developers to use AI in their day-to-day workflow. So that is the reason in this particular video I'm going to show you the exact direction how as a developer you can design, build and develop full stack application with AI. But one very important point I wanted to mention, and that is this is not a vibe coding video. We are not going to give one random prompt and we'll hope that our application works. Instead, we are going to build this entire full stack project step by step. And for this particular video, we are going to use Cursor 3 as our agent powered interface. So what are the things we are going to learn? So first, you are going to learn how you can create detailed cursor rules. You're also going to learn how you can create proper feature specs and markdown documentation. I'm also going to show you that how you can do manual setup whenever it's needed, because it's very important. As I already mentioned, this is not a vibe coding application, so there will be some situations where we have to do some kind of manual setup. Once you do the manual setup, you're also going to learn how you can clearly inform the AI agent what is already completed, and also you're going to maintain one tracker file. Okay, so let's see the entire workflow. So first, as I already mentioned, we are going to use the Cursor 3. So first you will understand the cursor rules. We are going to create our specs or features. We are going to do the manual work whenever it's needed. We will create our prompts. We are going to call our agent, and once the feature is completed, we are going to update our tracker file. So now let's go to our application and let's see how this will work. So as you can see that this will be a landing page. We are going to use Next.js 16, Postgres, Docker and Node.js as our backend. So first we are going to sign in with Google, and we are not using any third-party packages here. Okay, so we are going to use direct Google auth. So let's select this particular account and you will be redirected to the dashboard page, and then you are going to have these specs. So you will be able to create the specs. So how this will work? So let's say I'm just going to create a new spec, and then I'm just going to add one spec here. So let's add the feature title. I'm going to give the problem description. I'm going to give the text tag here, and then I'm just going to give any additional info if it's needed. Okay, so it's going to do a API call, and based on that it's going to create our API documentation here. So once this is created, so you can see that this will be now generating, and once this is ready, you are also going to get the notification here real time. So you can see that you will get the first notification, and once this will be ready, you are going to get the second notification here. So there will be some time interval, so we need to wait for some time. Once that will be created, so you can see that you will get the second notification once we'll create here. So this will be marked as read, and you can also go to the details page, and you can see that this is going to create the detailed documentation based on the problem statements. For example, the API endpoints, database schema, front-end components, edge cases and all of these. So this is what we are going to build in this entire video. I'm pretty much sure that you are going to learn a lot of things. So let's get started and good luck. Alright everyone, now let's get started. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do, we need to download Cursor. Now whatever you are using, let's say you are using Windows or Mac, so just search for Cursor download, and then you can just download it. I already downloaded the same. I'm using Mac. If you are using Windows, just simply download it, and it's very simple. Now I wanted to mention a couple of things, that this project is completely practical project. Okay, so practical in the sense I'm going to show you real life example that how you are going to build a complete full stack application from start to the end. Now I'm not sure if you're going to believe me or not, or you might be thinking that I'm actually saying all these things, whatever I'm going to say, just so that you all will watch this video. You are not going to believe that now every single company is going to ask you that whether you have, or they are going to judge you whether you have these particular skills, which is that in your day-to-day life, whether you will be able to use AI tools to build apps or not. Very simple. So this is a non-negotiable skills that you need to have. You can search in Google, you can go to LinkedIn, you can maybe send messages to some other people who are working in some product-based companies and see, and then you can come back and you can tell me that no, Sangam, whatever you mentioned, that is wrong. Every single company, what they're going to do, right? So they are now including AI in their daily workflow. So now they will expect junior or senior, even managers, even product managers, so that they can use AI in their day-to-day life, so that they will be able to do the task very quickly, there will be less errors. For example, let's say we're working in a sprint, and your sprint, they previously you used to get maybe 2 or 3 tasks. Now in the same period of time you will be able to do 5 or 6 tasks. Okay, so this is going to increase the productivity. Now I can guarantee, if you watch this complete video, right, the skills that you are going to get, you will be able to use, or sorry, you will be able to create any kind of full stack application. It can be on any tech, doesn't matter, from scratch. Now for this one, the reason of choosing Cursor, because this is I feel like little less expensive, right? Because at the end you need to pay money, whatever you're using. If you're using Claude code, so you can see, I think there is a news also that is came that Microsoft is now they're considering to reduce the uses of Claude because of too much cost, right? So this is one of the reason that I've decided to use Cursor. Now first of all, I just wanted to mention all of this. So as I already mentioned, that you need to download you need to download Cursor. If you are using Mac, download for Mac. If you're using Windows, download for Windows. So that will be the first step. Okay, now what you can see that, okay, first of all, let me explain this. I already have created this project. Okay, so this is the exact project that we are going to build. Okay, why? Because this is, see, we are going to write code very little, because you need to understand that how we are going to work with or create manual work, and how we are going to explain all these things to our agent. So what will happen, right? We can't write each and every line, because this video will be 20 hours long. So we're going to copy paste, but we are going to understand each and every line, and the folder structure, and the rules, that how actually you can make use of this AI tool. Remember, this is not a vibe coding tool. I already mentioned in the intro very clearly. Okay, so that means whatever project that we are going to build, this one, you should have proper understanding of that particular tech. So what I mean by this, let's say for this one we are going to use Next.js, we are going to use Postgres, we are going to use Docker, we are going to use Node.js, all these things. So that means you need to have some idea, or else, so consider you don't know what is Next.js or Node.js and you are starting building, that is kind of a vibe coding, that is very bad, which is what we are not going to do. So that is the reason we are going to have a proper folder structure. We are going to have a manual work folder, we are going to have a specs folder, we are going to have agent folder, we are going to have a Cursor rules folder. So all these things we are going to build. Okay, so first let's get started. So what are you going to do, right? You can see that I don't have anything else here. It's simple blank folder. I just open inside Cursor. And also very important, we are going to use the auto mode. Okay, if you just uncheck this one, so you will get a lot of other options. For example, let's say Opus 4.7 extra high. You can see that this is going to just see the context window, it's 300k. Okay, so it's crazy. In some cases we are going to use Composer 2.5. this is very fast. Context window is also less, but the best will be here. We are going to use auto mode. Okay, so now what are you going to do, right? So first of all, okay, let's enable this. Okay, so first what we will do, so go to terminal, open terminal. Now we need to work with terminal a lot, and here first of all what we will do, right? So we need to create our project. So that will be the first thing. We are not going to do anything. We are going to create our project manually. Okay, so first here what I will do, I'm simply going to do npx create next app @latest, and I'm just going to give this one name as client. Okay, now this naming is very important, and also if you notice, I've given this one name as SpecForge. This is just a random name. Why? Because all the prompts, specs, manual work files, all this I've created, I've given in this particular name. So you have to be very careful whenever you're using. I will highly suggest just use the same name, right? Even if you're downloading the source code, let's say you're giving a different name. So what you need to do, right, whenever you're going to, I think it will be also better if you can do it. So what will happen, you're going to write each and every file, you will understand, and whatever folder name that you have given, you can just change that name to whatever name you're giving. Okay, so for example, let's say you're giving full stack AI, so in that case you have to change all of this in all the files. So first of all, I'm just going to do npx create next app @latest and client. So this is going to create our client folder. So I'm just going to do customize TypeScript yes, ESLint no, React compiler no, Tailwind CSS yes, source folder yes, app router yes. And also you can see that no, we don't want to customize, and whether you like to include a agent.md file to guide agents. Now for this one we are going to have this in our root. Okay, for now I'm just going to keep this one as no. Okay, so this is going to create one folder. Now do this, now go here, and then we are going to create one more folder which will be our backend folder. And remember, if I want I can do the same inside client only. So what I mean by this, I first thought that okay, I'm just going to use Next.js or Next.js only as our backend, so you're going to have our API routes. But then I thought that oh no, I actually searched on YouTube. So there are some quite good videos that actually is there on this particular topic, that how you can create a full stack app from AI. But some of them are actually using Next.js as backend only, but in real life you'll notice, right, we are going to have a separate backend always. So that is the reason I've decided that we are going to use Node.js as backend and Postgres. So first of all, this is actually done. So let's clear this, go to server, and I'm just going to do npm init -y. So it's going to create a package.json. You don't have to do anything here. Okay, so let's clear this, and then also what you're going to do, right, so let's quickly create our now again, remember, you can also create each and everything using agents also. But you might be thinking or might be asking that then why I'm showing you all these things. So I'm just showing you different way of doing things. For example, let's say you are creating a very big project. Not everything you can create using agents, right? You will also agree. Some of the things you also do manually. So that is why I actually kept some of the steps intentionally in this particular project, so that you'll understand that whenever you are going to build something manually, how you're going to inform agent that okay, this part I've already done, so you don't have to do it. You're getting what I mean? So that is the reason we have all this manual work folder. So I'm just going to explain this one later. So first what I will do, right, so here you're also going to create a ts config.json file. Okay, oh sorry, what I'm doing, man. So here let's create directly here. So I'm just going to do ts config.json. now let's go here, let's quickly just maybe let's search sadcn. I'll just go to AI mode, and I'm just going to do give modern ts config json file for Node.js backend project. So it's going to give me a simple config which we are going to use. You can see that we just got it here. So you can just copy this, and then we can just paste it here, and then we are going to ask our model that if you want to change something here, then you can do it. So this is the second thing that we have done. Okay, so now what will be the next step? Now we are going to install our sadcn. Why? Very important. See, we are going to have our css styles and everything, right, or basically our theme. Now why we are creating the theme manually? These things are very important concept. Okay, first of all, when you will be working on a real project, or let's say you are working on a freelancing project, your client is going to have some requirements. So this is the use cases that I will suggest that don't follow agents blindly. Some of the things you have to take decision, and you have to do the things by yourself. So what we are going to do, right, we are going to create the theme by ourselves, and we are going to install that theme, and then we are going to inform agent that oh, I have my theme installed. You are not going to use any custom css classes or anything, just you have to follow the exact theme classes from my global.css file throughout this particular project. So what will happen, your theme will be unique or uniformly added, right, throughout these sections whenever you're going to implement something. So first what I will do, right, so let's duplicate this, and then I will go to this one, and maybe you can just use any color you want, right, it's up to you. Maybe let's do what I'll do, purple, and here also I'm just going to use purple. Let's keep all this same, and this is the code that you're going to give. If you want, you can just change. Okay, just try to experiment. If you want to do it, it's absolutely fine. Now go to docs, installation, go to Next.js, and then what I'll do, right, see, we have npx sadcn at the latest, and you can also mention model to do that also. It will be able to do it, but for now I'm just going to copy this, open this, copy the preset from here, and then I'm just going to paste it. Okay, now cut it, and then we are going to install it here, but we have to be careful. We have to do it inside our client folder, and then we are going to paste it here. Okay, enter. So you have to install sadcn. Let's do it. Now you'll see that it's going to rewrite your global.css file, which is what we are going to inform our model. Okay, that okay, I have a global.css that is created. You're going to follow the same file throughout this particular project that we are going to build. And you can see that this is done, updated app/global.css. Fantastic. So now what are the folders that we are going to have? Very important. Okay, so first of all, we are going to have a root level agents file. Okay, that will be your agents instructions. We are also going to have our cursors rules that I'm going to explain that why actually we need it. Then we are going to have a context. Now this context, I'm going to keep one tracker file which is going to update the tracker. This is optional. Okay, if you want you can also do it, or you can also skip this one. Then we are going to have a very important section which is also very important. I'm repeating again and again because whenever you're going to build any project, even though you see that in some projects they are not going to agree that okay, not agree means they're not going to cover these particular things, that okay, you don't have to do something manual, but actually you have to do it. I'll give you one real scenario. So let's say you're building something with AI and you're getting some error. So how you're going to do that? See, the best way of doing those things that you create one errors folder here. Okay, and then whenever you're going to get certain error, create one particular file, paste that error, and then you just give the context to that particular errors file whenever you're going to interact with agent. What will happen, right? That context will be saved in that agent's memory. Until unless the agent's context will not cross, it will actually remember, so that it will not repeat the same mistakes again. You're getting what I'm talking. These are very important concepts. So that is the reason we're going to have a manual work folder, which is going to actually tell that okay, these things are manually done, so you're not going to do it. Then we are going to have, so this is optional. Okay, so I just kept this one intentionally. Again, I will create a prompts folder. You don't have to do it. This is just for your copy paste. So when you're going to download the source code, so that you can just copy paste, or else what will happen, you'll watch the video to manually write it. You're getting what I'm talking about. So this is the prompts folder we are going to have. The most important one is the specs folder, which is going to have very detailed information. Now this is very detailed. I've actually decided to keep very detailed so that you'll get very good idea. Now remember, this is actually, some of the places is optional, so you don't have to do each and everything. Okay, but you'll see that some places I've kept it's very detailed, so that there is very less room of error, so that agents will do very less error. So you're going to get very less error. I can guarantee, if you're giving proper specs that okay, this is what I need to build, this is the properties I'm going to have, this is the packages you have to install, you are going to get very less error. I can guarantee. So this will be my specs folder, and this will be my agents folder. And also you're going to have a docker compose.yml file, which is also you're going to ask agent to build this. Okay, so with this, so now what will be the next step? Next step, we are going to understand what is the concept of cursor rules, because we need to create the rules on the top level, which is nothing but which will be your system level instruction. So you can see that it's system level instruction to the agent. So what will happen, right, whenever we are going to interact throughout this particular thing, so cursor is going to always check this particular rules folder, and it's going to go through the root level rules, so that it's not going to do some mistakes. First of all, that is the first thing, and second thing, it's going to remember those rules. For example, I'm going to give one simple rule that we are going to use TypeScript. You are not going to use any kind of any type. So that what cursor is going to do, right, whenever it is going to write any TypeScript types, it will try to avoid writing any as much as possible. So this will be the very simple way to explain that what actually rules are, but this one we are going to discuss in the next part. So with this, now the basic things is done. So we just created our first manual task, which is creating the client project, creating the server folder. So now let's start working with our actual agents workflow from the next part. All right, so now let's understand the rules concept. Okay, so first of all, what actually rules are, right? So rules will be, to explain in a better way, it will be persistent instruction for your AI agent. Okay, so what you are simply doing, right, that instead of repeating the same thing or same prompt every time, we usually write rules. Okay, and in this case, what cursor is going to do, cursor is going to use those rules as your project or your context guidance whenever it's going to generate or edit any kind of code. Okay, now why actually you need it? Now first of all, consider that you don't have any rules. Okay, what will happen, right, and you are also giving some random prompt, which we usually do, right? No one is going to write all these things like that. And you'll notice, I will give you 100% guarantee. Let's say you're using ChatGPT only. Now let's say you ask one particular thing to build. Next 2 hours you ask the same ChatGPT to do the same thing without any rules, or just give a particular prompt that okay, build this. What it's going to do, right, you'll see that there can be some changes in the folder structure that it created previous time, but in the new use case there is some difference, right? Now what will happen in this case, just to give you in this particular context, that let's say you're not writing any rules, so cursor may create random folder structure. So that will be the first thing. It can install unused libraries also, okay, rewrite some of the code that we have already written. Those maybe, let's say, no changes is needed for those, even it's going to rewrite, okay. So there can be so many problems. So that is the reason we need particular these rules. Very important. We are going to add this on the root level, okay, and this will be stored in your .cursor/rules. Okay, so first what you're going to do, right, before we'll do that, let's go to server folder and let's create our empty source folder for now. Okay, and also what we need to do, right, we also need to create a root level agents folder. Now I can see that I just show you one thing, that agents.md also you can create. Okay, this is actually instruction in your markdown format, simple alternative to cursor rules. So that means if you're using these, you don't have to do it, okay, but just to give you some basic idea that you can just create agents here. Okay, so let's see, you're going to create here, so you have to create agents.md at the root. Okay, but the main will be your root cursor rules that you are going to create. So that is what it's mentioned here. Okay, so now what will be the next step? Next step also, let's create our docker compose, right? We have the docker compose.yml file. We don't have to do anything here for now. And then first of all, let's do here, let's create the folder. So I'm just going to do cursor. Okay, so that will be the folder name, and inside this you have to create what? This will be folder again, so this will be rules, right? So cursor/rules. So first of all, let's go to the rules and let's copy the path, name here, and then I'm just going to paste it here. So let's start here. And if you're thinking that okay, this I'm just doing copy paste, there is a reason, definitely it's going to save some time, but do not skip, because what you're going to understand by watching this video, you know, I'll tell you, you're going to understand that how you're going to do proper prompting, which is very important. It's not going to help you to build your project properly, but also help you in cost optimization also. Okay, so these things are also very important. So now what are you going to do? First of all, you can see that some of the core rules. So now we are going to go through this. First, work on one active section at a time. Now what you have to do, right, you have to treat the active specs file as the implementation source of truth. What I mean by this, so for every specification that we are going to have, or every features, let's say you're creating this one as features, you can do that, but in that case what you have to do, you have to give this one not specs, you have to give this one as features. You are getting here, I'm given that this one as specs, so I'm writing as specs. So I'm simply telling that when you're implementing one particular thing, you just implement that only. Okay, keep implementation changes scope to active spec. Do not add features blah blah unless the active spec explicitly asks for them. Very important. So that means we are giving a restriction here. Okay, so this is the concept of restriction. Prefer simple readable code. Why? Because this line will go into your rules, because every time it's going to create, let's say cursor is checking the main root level rules, so it's going to understand, okay, I have to create a simple and readable code, not like some very complicated code. Okay, and then very important, I mentioned that okay, update context/tracker.md file after you complete a particular section. Keep this short. I just mentioned that how you're going to do that. Section status, decision next section, and known issues only. If there are any issues, just add it there. So first we are going to just do, so copy this. This will be the core rules. This will be always apply will be true, and then we are going to paste it here. So this will be the first step. Then let's go here, and second we have to take our front-end related rules. Remember, these all are root level rules, and you'll understand that these things are very important. Okay, that what actually we are going to do here. So first of all, what I mentioned, this is the description. Okay, front-end rules. Why this is always apply false? Because let's say you're building a backend feature. In that case, you don't have to read this one, right? So this is optional, you're getting, but in the core features you can see that this is true. In the backend also this will be false. Okay, so now you'll go here. So front-end rules, that front-end app lives in the client folder. use Next.js app convention, use SadCN components where it's going to fit the feature. Okay, SadCN theme is already installed. Do not invent random tailwind classes, colors, very important. Prefer theme classes. Now I just given some of the example, you don't have to give this many example also. I'm just added all of this for more detailed so that you can understand why. Because I already mentioned that we are going to create our global.css file which is going to have our theme, correct? You can see that we have our theme here. So that is the reason I clearly mentioned that when you are going to implement any kind of tailwind related things, you're not going to invent any classes. Okay, just added some more here. You can just read all of this. Why I added all of this? Because this card component, button component, these we are going to use in this particular project. Let's say in the project that you are building, in that you have dialog component also, you have separator component also, you have text area, so you can just add all of this here, just like how I have added. Okay, now very important thing that I've added here, that this is a root level. Why? Because in the front end, when you're going to do API call, see, these things are kind of helper that we are going to use throughout in our, whenever you're going to do any kind of API integration. So that is the reason I clearly mentioned that we are not going to use any third-party packages. You are going to use only 2 API helper files which will stay in this client/source/lib/server.ts. This is for server components and this is for your client components or client level data fetching. Okay, do not create Next.js API proxy routes unless an active spec explicitly asks. You don't know how much important these things are. Okay, so these rules are very important. Why? I'll give you one simple example. If you don't do this, now let's say you are given a prompt that my backend is now ready, my front end stays in the client folder. What you have to do, you have to now integrate your backend with the front end with the feature. What cursor is going to do, or any model, whatever you're using, so they are going to understand, oh, now I have so many options. Maybe I can use Axios to do the API call. No, maybe I can do fetch. Why I need to do Axios? No, maybe I can create some custom hook, or maybe I can create API proxy routes. So what I mean by this, they have a lot of options, so it can do whatever it needs. Or maybe it can also do like that, for some features it can use Axios, for some features it can use API routes, so you don't know. So that is the reason it's always very important to mention explicitly that what actually you are going to do. Okay, I know I'm taking a lot of time, but see, this is the point of this particular video. This is how you are going to build all of this, so you have to understand all these things. So copy this and then we are going to just paste it here. Okay, so this is going to apply intelligently. Save this. Now moving to the next one, which will be our backend. Copy this and then I'm just going to paste it. So let's go here. So first of all, I just mentioned that this will be our backend rules. First of all, backend app lives in the server folder. This will be our main entry file. And maybe you can also change this one to server, or let's see, maybe you can do, let's keep server.ts only. Main route aggregator is server/source/routes.index.ts. Why I've added this? Because I don't want multiple routes to be used in this server folder. So that is the reason I wanted to keep a root routes folder. Okay, use express with TypeScript. We are going to use raw PG, means we are not using any ORM. So you can see that I mentioned do not add any ORM here. Okay, database connection code belongs to this folder. SQL migration files belongs to this folder. Repository file is going to belongs to this folder. You are also going to understand how you're going to tell the agent that okay, this will be our folder structure. Middleware is going to belongs to this folder. Shared helpers, so whatever helpers that you're going to build, that will go into this folder. And you might be thinking, hey, why this he's writing all these things. Absolutely, you don't have to write, but what will happen if you don't do this? Now let's say if agent needs to create a helper, it can create a folder name with helper also, it can create a folder name with utils also. So what I mean by this, if you're building the project, you are the owner of that project, you have that decision, you have to make that decision. Okay, no, I only wanted to keep my helper inside my leave folder only. You're getting, so that is the reason mentioning all of this is very important. Do not add controller or services folder unless an active specs is telling you to do. Okay, do not hardcode secrets. Okay, add required environment variables in these folders so that I can copy from this folder to my env folder. You're getting, so these will be my backend rules. So now let's copy this and then we are going to paste it here. and save this. And then we are going to have our spec level workflow rules. So let's first copy the file name. I'll paste it here, and here you can see that what I simply mentioned, this is going to tell that okay, where my spec related files stays. So first of all, this will be spec / all this .md files are the detailed implementation source of truth. So this is the actual implementation plan. Prompts actually the tiny folder that is my cursor launchers only. Do not repeat full task list, UI rules, backend rules, or file list inside prompts. A prompt should normally include only active specs, reference, section, scope, reminder, tracker, all these things. Manual work, very, very important. Files are for steps Sangam performs manually. Okay, so you can give your name, or just you can mention that this is the manually, such as project creation, provider setup, or environment preparation. Do not put manual account setup or installation steps inside implementation specs unless the specs only references the manual guide. Because what we're going to do, right, let's say we are going to implement our Google Auth. So I'm going to create the Google config that will go inside my manual work. Okay, so that will not go inside my specs. So then I'm going to tell cursor that okay, this is the manual work that I've already done, you don't have to do anything. Okay, one thing is also very important, I mentioned that prefer precise specs over large specs. Okay, so this will be my specs related rules, and then I'm just going to also paste it here. So this is done. So this will be the first thing that we have to do. Now what I'm going to do, right, as I already mentioned, so now we have to create all our folders. So first what we are going to do, let's check the file folder name that I have given, manual work. So let's rename these, copy, and then I'm going to paste it. Then we are going to have the specs. So rename, and then I'm going to do specs. So this will be my specs folder. What else we have? We also have the context. So copy this, and then we are going to create context. So inside context I'm going to have my tracker.md file. So here I'm just going to create tracker.md file. Okay, now from the next step what we are going to do, we'll start implementing our specs one by one. Before that we also need to do what? So let me just quickly clear this and let's run our client side, and I just don't want to do here. I'll just open in my browser. So this is now open. Okay, so with this now we actually know that okay, what we are building, why we need all these files. We also have done some of the manual work, right? So with that, now first step will be, what will be the first thing that we are going to do? First thing will be, first we are going to write our first manual work. Okay, that what is our initial project setup that we have done, and at the same time we are also going to have our project foundation spec, which is our first spec that we are going to build. So this is the second file that we are going to work, and the third will be, which is optional. Again I'm repeating, so do not think that you need this. This is only for all of you, so that you can download the source code and you can copy the prompt. You are getting what I mean? So this is optional, but still we are going to keep it. So I'll copy this and go to your prompt. So let's create a prompts folder also, and then I'm just going to paste it here. So now let's start working with this one, manual work. In the next step, first we are going to tell that okay, this is the manual work that we have done. Then you are going to mention in the specs that oh, you have to check the manual work file first. This is what we have done. Now you have to implement this. Then you are going to write prompts. We're going to paste the prompts, and we'll see that based on the specs whether it's implementing the properly all the steps properly or not. So let's see how we are going to do that in the next part. Okay, so let's start with the first section. Okay, so as I already mentioned, so we'll start with our manual setup file. So we'll go here. So now let's copy all of this, okay, one by one, because we need to now understand all of this what we are doing. So first, so I'm going to mention that okay, I already created the root project folder. This is the name. So we created the front-end app inside, installed SADScene inside client folder, installed and selected the theme because we have already installed the preset, remember? So copy this. Now enter, paste it. After this, we created our backend folder. We ran npm init-y inside. Now see, for first time, initially I'm going to explain each and every line. Later we are going to implement some of the specs, right? We'll see that next time it will be easier. So we created our backend folder, ran this, created server.ts.config, root level empty folder because this is empty, and then we have added all this cursor level system pack. So we added our cursor rules, agents, context, tracker.md file. Okay. Then we have the manual work, prompts and specs. Okay, here it is very important that cursor must assume this, that the project already exists. Cursor should not recreate the Next.js project, reinstall the SATCN, or move backend or frontend folder. Okay, so this is the first thing. So now let's copy this, and then we are going to paste it here. And after this, I'll just copy this and we'll paste it here. Save this. So this is the first thing that is done. So first, also you need to do one more thing, as I already mentioned, that we already have the rules, right? So you don't have to write agent.md, but in case, as I showed you here, right, that if you want agent instruction in the markdown format, this will be alternative. So here, if you, what you can do, right, you can simply tell like this. So this is your agent guide. This is the project rules, that is the root level rules that you have to read, that is here. For implementation work, follow the active section spec or features, whatever you're giving, that is inside this particular specs folder, right? And then I'm just simply giving that after completing every section, you have to update the tracker file. So copy this and then just paste it here. So now what will be the next step? Next step will be your main spec that we are going to write. Alright, now this is where you can see that how much detailed I have kept. Now this is intentionally, you don't have to write all of this, okay? I'm repeating again and again, you don't have to write each and everything whenever you're going to build any project. But what I mean by this, when you keep some very detailed information, right, the error possibility will be very less, because I'm simply telling that okay, this is what you have to do. But again, we have to be very careful, because this will also increase your context window. Okay, so that's why I mentioned, right, that you don't have to give each and everything. This is only for project purpose. Okay, project purpose in the sense, it's not like you don't have to write anything. I'm repeating. See, why repeating all of this? Because I know some of you is going to comment that why you are writing all of this. This is going to increase the cost. Definitely, you don't have to give everything in the context, but I'm just giving you a very detailed idea. Based on your project requirement, you have to decide what you're going to write. It's a very simple concept. I can't give you a simple golden prompt and that prompt is going to work for each and every project. It's not going to work like that. So that is the reason I've kept this particular file very detailed. Each and every specs, you'll see that every specs is very detailed. So now let's go here. So we'll start with the first one, that what we need to do. So first we have to run our Express server, okay, because we have an empty folder, we don't have anything else in our server folder, so you have to run our server, okay, so run our backend. So first I'm just going to do create a minimal backend foundation, okay, the section must stay small. First, see the important part. First of all, I clearly mentioned the manual setup is already completed. See this particular file, okay. What you have to do, so first you have to install your backend dependencies. Inside server, install all these runtime dependencies. We need express cores, cookie parser.env and the dev dependencies, okay. Once you'll install the dependencies, now consider you are using implementing a different project where you need a different package, maybe it's some related to some PDF. What you have to do, you have to mention that also, that you have to install this particular project package. If you don't mention, how your agent is going to understand? Once you'll do that, update the backend scripts, normal thing. And then I clearly mentioned that if you want, you can check this and update the server/ts.config only if this is required for a clean backend build. Create a .env example file, okay, and here create the route index. This will be a route index, I clearly mentioned. It should export one express route. See, for now, get which will be /health, means we are not doing anything else here. This will be the response that I need. Status okay, this is the service, and then you have to create a express server entry. What this is going to do, load your env, create express app. You don't have to mention all of this, but again, it's always better to mention. For example, let's say you are not mentioned this particular line. There is a possibility that agent is going to skip your codes config. You're getting, so that is the reason it's better to mention. Add a 404 handler, add a simple error handler, and then I given some restriction. Very important, you have to give a restriction that you're not going to implement a Postgres related things, not going to add any migrations, not going to add any repository and all these things, not going to add any OpenAI routes, front-end pages, API clients, blah blah, all these things. Once this is done, you can run this npm run dev, and then you're going to check in another terminal, okay. So this is what we have mentioned. So now we are going to copy this. Definitely I'm not going to rewrite this line by line. Go to your specs, first spec, paste it here, and then we're going to save this, and now we'll go to, so spec is done, so manual work we have done. So prompts, now this prompt I already mentioned, this is optional, so just copy this, go to your prompts and paste it here. So what we are simply telling that you have to use this as your source of truth, which is what your specs slash this particular folder, okay, because this folder is going to tell. I clearly mentioned the manual work is done, implement the section 1, do not add all of this, and then update this particular file. So now we'll copy this. I'm just going to close this because this is optional, I already mentioned. So what you need to do, right, I'm just going to paste it here. So this will be the first thing, and then I'm going to run, and let's see what it's telling. So you can see that what actually it read. You remember this part in app, sorry, I have to go here. See, it's only read these particular rules, so that's mean it's going to apply intelligently. Remember all of this because we are doing a backend related task, so it's going to do that. So we're already creating all of this. Now it's asking that whether I wanted to install all of this. Definitely I have to install, so I'm going to do run. Also let's keep it here so that this will be better. So I'm just going to do run. So it's going to install. It's created one env, and then I think when this will be done, you can just also check all of this. Let's wait for some time. And also you'll see that what we're going to do, right, we are also always going to run our npm run build, so that we can check that whether our build is successful or not after implementing each and every section. So you can see that okay, something it's giving. Let's do run npm run dev. So you can see that it's already coming and it's open one folder, so server is now running. Let's run this, and this is done. So it's actually completed all of this, right? So we are going to see that what actually we have done all these steps. So we'll go here. So let's see. So first of all, you will notice one thing, that it's created one, so its server is now running here. Okay, so first we can also check it, right? So let's go here, copy this, paste it, and then I'm just going to do health. So it's running. Okay, fantastic. So you can see that it's going to tell that okay, these are the changes, package.json, this is your server.index. This is what it's created, right? This is we mentioned, and this is our root folder. So we are going to see that what actually it's done in the root folder, and this is also it's updated your tracker file, right? So if we go to tracker file, you'll see that we're going to keep this. It's actually updated all of this, right? It's going to mention that completed and everything. So first let's go to our env.example. We have to keep all. Okay, we have to keep all. So enable auto keep. So first let's go to env.example. So you can see that it's created port 4000. This is a front-end URL that we are going to use. Fantastic. Go to your server.ts and see that what actually it's doing. Import chords, created the express application, get the port, chords config, credentials true. Fantastic. Express.json middleware, cookie parser, and this is your root routes. So how clean this is. You know why this is possible? Now definitely anyone can all of this. Even if you just type here that create a simple backend project, it's going to create all of this. But what we are learning from this, the more detailed you will be. Detailed in the sense, again I'm going to repeat, it's not the number of lines. Here it is too much, but I kept this one intentionally. I'm going to repeat this again and again. This is intentional, just to give you the idea. But what I'm trying to tell you that whatever we have done right, we can also do the same thing maybe in 50 lines in this particular file. But you have to understand that based on your project requirement, you need to know that okay, what are the things I need to tell agent so that it will not do any mistake. First of all, it's going to maintain a proper folder structure. Things is going to work properly and the errors will be less. That will be your objective, right? So this is how you have to do it. So now the same thing we are going to follow in all the next steps. So with that, now let's move to the next one. And before that also you have to do one more thing. I think you I believe that you have Docker desktop, because I already mentioned we are going to use Docker with Postgres. We're not using MongoDB. So Postgres we are going to use. So if you don't have, install it for Windows or Mac, whatever you have, and then let's move on to the next one, which will be our database and our migration work. All right, so now let's move on to the next one. Okay, so next one what we will implement, and that will be our database and migration. For this one we don't have any manual work. Okay, so that is the reason we are not going to create any manual work. So first let's copy this, and let's create another folder inside our specs. Sorry, not folder, it will be file. So now let's close everything else. So first of all, let's go one by one, and then we'll understand that what actually we are trying to do here. And I already mentioned before that you should have your Docker desktop that should be running. So first we have mentioned our goal, okay, that this will be that we need to add Postgres for our project. What is our current state? So we are assuming that section 1 is already completed. This project has a client folder server with package.json source, right, minimal express backend foundation, and then root docker compose YML file already present. These are the rules, and this will be our tracker file. What is the scope? Scope will be, because we are working with only with database related work, right? Before that, let's copy it till this part, and then we are going to paste it here. Now, so first we'll mention that we are not going to add our Google Auth JWT middleware. We are not going to add actual our spec generation routes, dashboard routes, notification routes, any front-end pages, right? So all these things, again, we are adding the restriction. Okay, now first let's copy this. So I'm just going to copy this scope, paste it here. After this, we have to mention that what are the things we are going to create. So first, I already mentioned this is a root file that you can update or create, and these all are the files that we need to create. Now again, I'm repeating once again, you don't have to mention all of this, but why it is better to mention, consider that if you remember in our rules we already mentioned that this will be a migration folder. If we are not giving all of this, for example, this is our file name that we wanted to give, cursor can give, or the agent whatever you are using, it can give any name it wants, right? So it will be difficult for you to do back and forth. So that is the reason when you are implementing a feature, if you are giving a proper instruction, it will be much easier for the agent also to understand. So it's simply telling that when we are going to have our database related logic, database is going to do what? If you're creating a Mongo, you're going to have a Mongo connection, right, using Mongos. Here what we are using Postgres, so you're going to create our pool or our connection. So that's the reason we need our source/db/pool.ts file. We need a migration.ts logic which is going to do the migration, and then we are going to create our actual migration. So one will be our user table, one will be our specs table which is going to actually generate the specs, and one will be our notification table. Makes sense? Now if you are creating an e-commerce website, what will happen? You can have 100 tables. Consider you can have 100 tables. You're going to add all those tables in a single file? No. In that case, you have to divide the work first of all, so that the context window will be less. Also, you have to be very, very clever, or also very, very clearly you have to understand that when you are going to ask agent to create which file, that is also very, very important. Here we have only 3 tables, so it clearly mentioned that you have to create these 3 tables, but this is not yet done. Why? Because once we create the table, we have to mention that okay, these all the properties each and every table is going to have. Extremely important, because if you don't mention that okay, my user is going to have a username, my user is going to have a age property, country property, address property, how your cursor or the agent you are using is going to understand, right? Then we mentioned that this will be a tracking file. Do not modify the front-end files mentioned here, and this will be our implementation requirements. Now the main thing that what actually you need to implement now. So first of all, we are telling that okay, you have to update our docker compose file with our service name. This is the image, right? We are using Postgres. Container name, this is our database name. User is Postgres, password is Postgres, and this is the port I am using here. You can give anything you want, and also I'm going to have our named volume for persistence. Okay, next we have the backend env example that we already have created our env.example file. You remember this one? So I mentioned that if you have this file, you don't have to create it, you have to update it. So I mentioned create or update. Okay, so just add the database URL. Do not add any Google Auth JWT related things. This belongs to later section. You have to also add the dependency if missing. So PG dependency we need to add, because for connection we need this. Once we'll do that, we have to add our migration script, which we are going to add in our package.json. And then what I mentioned, right, you can see that we mentioned that this will be our database pool that you are going to import all of this. I given a lot of details here that okay, this is the file you have to give, and then this you have to throw error if this is missing. All these things you can read it. And then the main thing you have to understand, that is the migration runner. Okay, so I mentioned that first you have to load your env variables, create a migration table if it is doesn't exist, read the SQL files from the migration folder, so from this folder that we have created, this migration folder. So once you read this, skip the files that are already recorded in this migration table. So that is the reason we need this particular table. Okay, why we need this? Consider I mentioned that scenario, right? You have 100 tables, already 10 tables are migrated. So next time when you are going to migrate the rest of the 90 tables, you are not going to migrate the tables that are already migrated. So that is what I mentioned here. Run each pending SQL file, insert the file name into the migration table after success, and log it. Okay, so this is the logic what you have to implement. Okay, and then I also mentioned migration files. So create exactly these 3 migration files. And now this is the important part. Okay, so first of all, I mentioned right, that you need to have some idea on the tech that you are working. So what I mean, because we're using Postgres, now let's say you don't know what is Postgres or why we need this PG crypto extension, then you're in the wrong place. So you can't implement a vibe coding application blindly if you don't have any idea. You're getting what I mean? So that's why these things are very, very important. So you need to have some idea, or else if your company is giving you ChatGPT Pro subscription and asking that you have to implement work quickly, or you have to increase the productivity, or how much you're using AI tools in your day-to-day life, and you don't have any freaking idea of the tech that you are working, let's say you joined as a backend developer, so how much you're going to do? You're going to burn all your tokens, right? So companies usually have what? They're going to have some kind of tokens and everything, so you can't use unlimited. And so that is the reason you should know some basic idea so that you can implement all of this. So in the table you mentioned that we are going to have an ID, Google ID, email, name of the URL, image, or created at. This will be our specs table, right? So we have our UID, user ID, which is our foreign key, which is going to do what? It's going to reference our primary key of this particular table. And then we are going to have input fields for title, problem description, text tag, complexity, and optional notes. Okay. Generated content we have as this particular type. Then we are going to have status, generating, ready, or failed. Default will be generating, and then we are going to have a created at. Allowed complexity values, small, medium, and large. And then we are going to have a notification table, which we are going to have a UID, user ID, again foreign key, which is the primary key of this table. This is the user table. And then we are going to have optional spec ID, message, is read or not, and created at. Once you implement all of these, you're going to do what? Do npm install, because you have to install the packages, and then you're going to run docker compose of -d. Then you're going to migrate the migrations, and then you're going to update the tracker. So this is what we're going to do. So now let me just copy all of this, because we have explained all of this, right, what we are doing. So this will not be as difficult. So paste it here. Okay, I think I pasted 2 times. So save it. So I think this is done. Now let's go to our prompts, and then again, if I want, I can directly copy paste, but I'm going to add it here for all of your reference only, so that you can just take the reference from here. And then I'll copy this, and once again this is the same thing what I'm telling, that okay, you're going to read this spec file that we have. This is the scope, that Postgres Docker Compose, DB pool, migration runner, and the 3 SQL migration file, and do not add anything else. And you're going to update the tracker.md file once this is done. So we're going to copy this, and then we're going to again paste it here, and then run it. Okay, so you can see that it's creating now. So let's wait. Okay, so you have to install, so we'll do run. Okay, so packages are already installed, so let's see. So let's run this. Because why we need this? Because we don't have this image in our Docker desktop, right? So it's going to pull that image. So you can see that it's pulling. So let's wait. Container had started. You can see that container started, and server is now listening. Fantastic. So I think this is done. Alright, so you can see that this is done. So now you can see, so let's go here. So let's go one by one. So first you can see that it's created this file. So as I already mentioned, this is the user, this is password, this is the port that we are using, Let's go to here. So we have this container is created. Go to images, we have our Postgres image, and next go next. So we'll go to our pool. So it's created the pool. We'll go to migration. So we have the 3 table, right? So ID, Google ID, whatever you mentioned here, you can just verify all of these. Create specs, and then we have the create notification. These 3 table, okay? Then you have the migrate. Now let's see the migrate, right? So I already mentioned this is actually important, that first you have to ensure that migration table is exist. So then what we're going to do, right, it's going to go through each and every file that we have, that ends with .sql, and then it's going to do what? It's going to do the migration here. So it's going to read it, it's going to query here, right, and then it's going to do the migration. So here we have the migration here, and you can also verify. Go to package.json, we have the migration command here. So you can just simply run this run migrate. So it's going to do the migration, which is already completed. So now I think we have completed this. Go to here, and you can see that what it is telling, that now we have completed all of this. So also this is also nice. So it's added the nodes here, that Postgres by Docker Compose, it's running here. This is the shared pool, and Express is also running here. And if you go to your env.example, it's added a database URL. Go to env, it's added the env also here. So that means the database setup and the migration is also completed. So with this, now let's move to the next one. Now I wanted to mention one more point, that try to go through these files, that whatever we have created here, because this is the most important part. Based on this we are creating everything. So think like that if you don't have any kind of agent or anything, this is how you are going to implement the thing manually by yourself. The same thing, instead of doing by yourself, what you are telling agent to do it. You are getting what I'm telling. So basically what I'm telling, that whatever my thinking process, I'm adding that thinking process in this particular file, telling agent to implement that, so that it will save some time. Also the error possibility will be less. So that is the reason actually companies are also looking for those kind of developers. They can use day-to-day AI related tasks, so that it will also increase productivity. And to be honest, this is also just to check that how much agent can do, like this is also that trick. I know that one very well, but I just don't want to give you this negative thinking, because you'll see that in my channel you will not get any kind of negative thinking from my side, that AI is going to take your job like that. Always take things positively, because you'll see that no AI or no agent is going to do any job in any company without any manpower. So manpower is needed. Maybe instead of taking 10 people, they are going to take 5 people, but what you have to think, you have to think that much positively, that I will be in that 5 people only. You are getting. So the point is, if I try to explain it, the competition is more, as simple as that. So with that, this section is now completed. Now let's move on to the next one. Alright, so moving to the next one, what will be our next section? Next section will be, so we need to implement our Google Auth, and for this one we'll start with implementing our backend. So now typically how the process will looks like. Now remember, for this particular section there will be some manual work we have to do. Okay, so that means we need to have some manual work documentation, and based on that we are going to create our specs. So first of all, what actually we need? So first we need some of the credentials that you need to extract, or you need to first create on your Google Cloud Console, which will be what? Your Google client ID and the client secrets. So typically how the process will looks like, it is very, very simple. I'll try to explain that what will happen, right? So first of all, in our UI, so there will be one button. So why I'm explaining all of this? That's because when you're implementing any project using AI, so let's say you're implementing one particular features, so you need to actually have that understanding that how the process will looks like from start to the end. Okay, or else how you are going to create this particular spec, right? So that means what will happen, so we are going to have some kind of button on the UI. So let's log in with Google, or log in, or whatever you wanted to give there. You will click here, it will redirect to the login page on the Google login page. So that means you need to have that understanding, okay, how it will redirect that particular page to the Google login page. So that means we need some kind of Google configuration, so that Google will allow you to render their login page. You are getting. So that will be the first step. So once it will go to the Google login page, Then you will just select your Google account, you'll just log in using your Google account, and then it will actually redirect back to your application. So whatever application that you are creating, right? So that means that has to be some redirect URL that we need to configure in our Google Cloud Console. Once it will redirect back, what are the things that we need to see? That whether the user is actually authenticated using Google credentials or not. If it is not, so we need to redirect the user back to the login page, or we need to redirect the user back to some unauthentication page that you are not authenticated or your Google login was unsuccessful. You're getting, if the user is already successful in the Google login process, so we'll redirect the user back to our application, and then we are going to render some kind of info that okay, this user is authenticated. You are going to render the username or whatever you wanted to do that. So this will be the whole process. Why these things are very important? Because these will give you the understanding, okay, what are the things that I need to do manual. Now consider here, you will not ask your agent, right, to go to your Google Cloud Console, create your application, configure your redirect URL, all these things, right? So that means that will come under your manual work. You're getting how we are doing all of this. So that means for this particular section, we are going to have couple of things. First, we need to have a manual work that we are going to do, which will be our Google Auth setup. Once we'll do this setup, then we are going to create our feature. Now for this one, what I've done, right, I've actually divided into two. Why? Because this is little long section, so that is the reason. Instead of keeping each and everything in one single file, which will increase the context. Okay, anyways, I already mentioned, right, that here actually I intentionally given very much details. You don't have to give this much details, but this is just to give you the understanding that how you can write all of these particular specs or features whenever you are implementing anything. So first let's start with this. Let's go to manual work, and then I'm just going to copy the file name as usual, that how we are doing, and then let's create this file. So first of all, what we are going to do here, okay, so you can see that first I already mentioned that okay, these are the status that we already completed manually. So what are the things that we have completed manually? First, we have created our Google Cloud project. Auth consent screen is configured, right? And at the end we are actually usually have this. So I also mentioned that okay, this will be our redirect URI that we are going to set up in our Cloud Console. So what are the things that we need to get? We need to get the client ID, client secret, redirect URI, and our frontend URL, which is already there. Okay, now these you can see that I already mentioned that these I already added in our server/.env file. If you don't add these, you have to actually mention the agent to add it, but I will suggest that some of the don't depend fully on the agent. Some of the things try to do manual, okay, so that you'll have proper understanding, or else it's like similar to your vibe coding application, and then you will just hard code your secrets in the in your file, and then you will deploy. So many things are happening like that. Okay, so that is the reason I'm giving you this habit, so that you'll create this habit that not everything you have to do automate or using agent. Okay, you can see that I given a boundary section also, that there are some no backend auth files are created, only Google Cloud credentials and the .env file that are prepared. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this and then I'll paste it here. Okay, so this is the first thing. So that means what I need to do now, so first of all I need to copy these three things, and I need to go to my server and then go to .env and then just add it here. So this will be the first thing. Now how I'm going to get all of this? So first you go to Google Cloud Console. I already have a Google credentials created, that is only for my YouTube videos. Okay, that is only for the demo. So for now I'm just going to show you the client secret also, but please do not use mine, and at the same time do not use these particular secrets or share this secret with anyone, because I will always delete this secret once this video recording will be completed. Okay, I'm just giving you very much warning in this case. And also never hard code this Google secret. Okay, this is very important and very sensitive. So first of all, create one project. You can also create project directly from here also. I already created one project. You have to go to credentials. Okay, if you haven't given any consent, you just have to give the consent here. It will automatically come. Okay, if you don't give, so you have to just give that consent here. Once you'll create credentials, you can create a credentials from here, right? Auth, client ID and everything. So here just click on this client, and from here you will be getting the these two things, right? We have the Google client ID and client secret. So client ID is fine, right? This you can just copy directly from here. So this will be your client ID. Next will be your client secret. Okay, so you can see that I already have two secret, right? Now what we need to do, right, you can only create maximum two. So for now what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to disable both. Okay, so I'm just going to disable this, and also I'm going to delete this one. Okay, now what I'll do, right, I'm just going to add one more secret, and also I need to copy this. See, I will get the copy here, and then you will not get this option here, and then I'm just going to paste this secret here. Okay, then what I will do, right, also you can see that I already added the redirect URI, which will be localhost 4000. If you're running in a different port, please use the same. Okay, don't copy paste. If you're running in 5000, use that particular port here, /auth/google/callback. So you have to copy this, and also you just save it here, and then you just paste it here. I already added this, so this is what you have to do. Okay, so this will be the first step. So we added a client ID, client secret, redirect URI. Again, I'm requesting, please do not use mine. Okay, even if you're able to see it, which is fine, I'm going to delete it. Please create your own secrets. So now this is the manual setup is now completed. So next we'll start creating our specs. So I'll start with the first one. Let me just copy this, and then I'll go to my specs, and then I'll just paste it here. Alright, so now let's go a little faster, because now we already know that what actually you're doing, and I'm going to explain that what are the things that we need to do here. First of all, that what I always mention, right, whenever I usually do this kind of application, let's say I'm doing any freelancing project or whatever, any project for YouTube also, and creating any UI, I always give this thing, right, the main files that you want to do any changes, or let's say new files you have to create, I always give that information, because these I find very, very helpful. Because what will happen, right, this will also decrease the context, because if you don't give this one, right, there is a possibility that there is a complex features and it is going to read each and every file. Okay, so that is the reason I always give that, okay, these files you are allowed to change and not allowed to change. Okay, or you don't have to do anything on this particular file. So let's start with the first one, that what I mentioned, that this is okay, this I divided into two sections, right. So I mentioned that this section doesn't complete the login, right, callback JWT cookie, and this will be handled in the section B. So what is the current state? Assume that we have a backend foundation completed, this main server.ts exists, index.file exists for our main route file, right, .env.example file exists, root, this one is exists, this we've already done previously, and also required Google Auth are added here. What are the files that you are allowed to change? Package.json, env.example, route/index.ts, your auth file. If you don't have this one, right, so it's going to create this particular file. And then I mentioned that, okay, create on leave, where you are going to handle all kind of helpers, and these are the not allowed, right. So these you can't change anything here, so you don't have to do any OpenAI related files, specs, feature routes, dashboard routes, notification routes, all these. Okay, now here is the thing, these implementation steps I'm repeating again and again, you always don't have to give each and every step. Okay, every details you don't have to give. Normally what will happen, right, if you have proper understanding of the feature, and if you will give the overall idea, right, it will actually create the proper output. The agent is going to create the proper output always. Okay, but here what I will suggest, right, when you're practicing this, let's say you're a student and you're learning that how you can create all of this, so that this is going to help you tremendously when you will get into any company and they will have some kind of AI tools. Why these things are very important? Because you just can't copy paste each and every file, right. Let's say one file has 3000 lines. If you copy paste, right, it's going to burn a lot of tokens. You have to be very, very careful, because most of the companies, what will happen, they will have some kind of limit. So with one features only, you are going to burn every limit you're getting. So you don't have to copy paste everything. The reason why I've given here, so that you'll understand that how you can write all these things detailed way, and then how you're going to pick that what are the things you actually need. For example, I mentioned that you update this, right, you add all of this in the env.example, because in the env I've already added. Do not add any OpenAI or future features env variable, right. Create a small helper, one will be built. Now here, right, if you don't give this one, it's going to create one, and it's automatically going to import the same whatever it will create. Then I've added a expected Google profile shape, that this is how it's going to get, right. And there are some rules I've given: read credentials, throw clear errors if required values are missing, very, very important, right. Use URL search params for auth, query and body data. Do not touch database here, because you're not doing anything, and do not create any kind of JWT here also. Create a auth.routes.ts file. I mentioned that what you have to do, And for this one, what I mentioned, that whenever you're going to have a button, it's going to call this method, it's going to redirect to the Google URL, and do not implement any callback here, do not set any cookies, right? And then I just mentioned mount the auth cookies in the root file, right? And do not remove any existing health route. So what will be the expected? Server will start, existing health behavior is broken, full auth testing will happen later after front end auth flows, right? So we're not doing any testing here, it will be a little tricky, and at the end you're going to update the tracker file. So this is the first one. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this, and then we're going to just paste it here. And now let's go to our prompts, and then this is also optional, I think you already know. I'm just repeating again and again so that you will not get confused. This is just for all of you, so that you can just copy paste from here and then you can paste it. So what I mentioned, that this is what I have done. So first follow this spec, which spec this one we have created, right? Manual setup is already completed, implement only this section and do not add anything else. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this and then let's run it here. Alright, so you can see that this is now completed. So let's see what are the things it's created. So first of all, we have this Google auth file which is created under live, which is fine, right? Required env, it's created this particular Google auth URL. So you can see that it's reading from the env, created this, and it's at the end it's going to return the URL, that which is going to help us to redirect to the Google login page. Okay, and then it's going to create one more method which is going to exchange the code for our access token, which we are going to implement in the next section, correct? So this has all the helper function. You can see that this is going to fetch the Google profile, and this is done. Next we have the auth routes, and see, this is very interesting. So it actually created the routes that I only mentioned, it don't have anything extra for now. And then it's going to mount this one in the root route file. Fantastic. And this is done. Also you can see the server.env.example, and you can see that this is updated this, and these two are empty. Awesome. And then you go here and you can see that this is now completed. The tracker file is also updated here. Okay, also given the next, what will be our next section, which is going to handle the Google auth callback. So that means this section is now completed. Again, now you might be thinking we are not going through each and every code, which is not the motive of this particular video. The motive is how you can create all these kind of project using AI and your own understanding, not AI, I will say, because I always tell all of this. I don't know how other YouTubers or other courses are telling that do not depend fully on AI, but you have to use AI in day-to-day life, or else your job will be in danger. That is a fact, right? You can't, that is non-negotiable, but doesn't mean that you have to create each and everything using AI. Means you have to know that boundary. Okay, I'm talking from my own personal experience and practical experience. It's not like so it's not like that, okay, I have some experience and I left job and then I started teaching, but I actually know all of this, how these things are working in industry. So I'm giving you practical experience that you can't use AI in every single thing, but you have to use AI. You also have to show these kind of things in the company, because companies are now tracking that whether their employees are using AI in day-to-day life. It's sad, but obviously it's like that only. It's not going to change in any time soon. Okay, so you have to manage somehow. So with this is done. Now let's move to the next one, which will be, now it will be easy for you to understand. So what will be the next one? Next one will be, once we will redirect the user to the login page. Now it's time for what? So you need to handle the redirect. So once we are going to log in the Google login page, we are going to have our it's going to do what? It's going to come back to redirect URI. It's going to check the token. If this is successful, then we'll redirect the user to our application. So this is how it will work. And in the meantime also we need to do what? We need to create our JWT. We are going to create our session. Also we have to create our auth middleware. Now I've given too much information. Why? Again, same thing, you have to read each and everything, that how I have written all of this, and based on that you can decide that, okay, when I'm going to implement similar kind of feature, what are the things I need to implement, and what are the things I need to mention here, and what are the things even if I don't mention, still it's going to create properly. Okay, if you give too vague result, right? So what I mean by this, let's say you just implement, okay, now in section 3a Google redirect is completed. Now implement the not redirect, means redirect to the login page is completed. Now implement the rest of the things. So it is too, like, you are not giving proper information, so it's going to create whatever it wants. You got it? For example, just read this file. So I mentioned that complete the backend authentication using by handling auth callback. Okay, creating and finding the user, very important. Issue a HTTP only JWT cookie and adding session endpoints. Okay, some of the current state which is already completed. So we have a leave folder, remember we have these methods, and also we have a get auth / Google already exist. Database migration is completed, users tables already exist. Okay, and Google auth values are already present in the env file. These are the files that you are allowed to change. Either these files are already present or these files are not present, you have to create. For example, auth middleware is not present, user repository is not present. So user repository is nothing but your user controller. So you can change package.json, you can change the auth routes, you can create auth middleware, user repository, and jwt.ts, which will be another helper file. File not allowed to change. Don't change any front-end files, database migration file, OpenAI, same thing. Okay, then I've given the implementation steps. This is all for all of you in details. So first, add JWT dependency if this is missing, JWT web token, right? Do not add unrelated auth libraries, right? Update the server /env example. Like if you're adding something, for example secret or anything, keep existing Google auth env values, right? Create some helper module. So we have a sign auth token and verify auth token. So this is the process it will work, right? So you're going to create the token and you have to verify the token. Token will always have that information, so that by the token, or when you're going to decode the token, you will be able to understand that okay, this token is from which user. So that's the reason I'm given that okay, user ID and email should be present. Rules, you read this, use this as default 7 days, throw clear errors, very important. This is always, so it's going to handle errors properly. And do not store the full user profile inside JWT, again extremely important. Now these things you have to understand. Okay, so whatever your Google user profile is written, so you don't going to render each and everything, or you're not going to encrypt each and everything in your token. Okay, create the user repository. So this is going to do what? So this is going to actually find your Google user information, and then at the end it's going to save that information in your PostgreSQL. Okay, so this is what it's going to do. And here you can see that I mentioned that create your auth middleware, right? Auth middleware is going to do what? It's going to read the JWT, verify the token, and it's going to return 401 if the token is missing or invalid. Okay, then I mentioned that update the auth routes, which is you have to do it. So this is already existing, and add the rest, whatever you'll add. How the callback will work. Now again, these things if you want you can add, or if you don't add, still it's going to create it properly as my understanding, if you're giving the above information correct. So you have to read the code, fetch Google, because sometimes you don't know, as when you're implementing, right, you don't know each and every step, and that is fine. You don't have to mention each and everything. Okay, all right, so next we have, so I've added some cookie rules that okay, these all are the options that we need to use. And then I mentioned that we need to add one more route, which is important, and this is going to give you the current user information, right, which will be protected by the auth middleware. You can see that it's going to load the current user from DB using the user ID, because in the token we are going to store the user ID and the email, right? I already mentioned here on the above. Okay, and then I added one more route here, which will be for logout, which is going to clear the token that will be stored, and it's going to return the success will be true. Okay, and I clearly mentioned here that you are not going to add any test endpoint for this particular section, because once we'll implement our front end, then we are going to implement that. Okay, so this will be our second part of our auth backend implementation. Okay, before that, first let's copy this and we'll go to our specs, and then let's add it, and then we're going to copy, paste it. Now let's go to our prompts, copy, and then we'll go to our prompts, paste it, and then let's see what we mentioned here. So clearly mentioned that again you have to follow these specs that we have added, the last one, right? Manual setup is already completed, and implement only this particular section. You're not going to add any front-end auth UI or anything like that, and you're going to update the tracker as usual. So save this, copy this, and then we are going to run once again. Okay, so you can see that we have to install this one. Makes sense? So let's run this. All right, fantastic. So this is now completed. So now let's go one by one. First, let's go to env.example. This is added. Go to env. I think we need to add that too also here. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's copy this, and then we'll just paste it here, and then we're going to just use this. Okay, and then we can also replace this one here. So this is done. Next, what we need to do, right? So first you can see that, let's go here. So you can see that it's going to take the JWT, so it's required JWT. It's going to create the auth token. This is for signing, this is for verify, right? And then we just have to check one thing. Okay, it's doing the verify here. Fantastic, I think this is correct. Let's go to repository. Okay, so I think it's created all this, right? So we have the user type, user row, this is map user row. This is just to map the data that you are going to return in your API with the mapping that the data that is stored in your DB. Okay, and then we have the find user by Google ID, find user by ID. Fantastic. Find or create Google user, and I think this is correct. Next you have the middleware, right? So here, okay, so you have added the auth, user ID, email, require auth. It's going to take the token. If this is not present, return 401, or else you're going to verify the token. Okay, and this is important because this is going to add this particular custom property in your request object. So you can see that which it's actually imported from the Express, because this might not be present in your request object, right? So you have to add that in that particular interface, which is correct. Even if you're doing by manual writing, we have to implement all these. And very important, it's calling the next middleware, which is going to do what? It's going to either call the next middleware, or it's going to call the next handler that you are going to have. Next, go to auth.route. It's created the cookie options, correct. Google callback, fantastic. So I think everything looks good. Okay, so you can see for auth/me, it's protected by required auth middleware. Okay, so unless you are authenticated, you can't access this particular route, and then you have a logout route here. So with this, I think this is done. And then what we have to do, let me just check. I think in the package.json, I think we have already added this one. Awesome. So I think this is done. Let me just quickly do one thing. Let's go open one terminal, go to server, and let's do npm run dev. Okay, this is already running, so that means this is working fine. So what will be our next step? Next step will be we need to implement our OpenAI specs. Okay, so for this one, let's go here. Now remember one thing, for this one I'm going to use OpenAI because I already have the token. Here you can use any other options also. For example, let's say you can use Gemini, or you can also use something called Grok. Okay, I'm not sure if it is called Grok or something, right? So let me just check. It's called Grok only, right? So this also you can use. Now you might be asking that, okay, why you are using something that involves money? See, I'll be very honest here. If you're learning something with AI, right, at some stage you have to spend some money. I don't have any options here that I can give you some free options that you can use unlimited. You also all will agree, right? Whoever is going to create these kind of videos, even if they are creating on YouTube, or let's say you're watching or buying a Udemy course, there also, if they're using OpenAI, means you have to pay money. There is no other alternative. So that is the reason I just wanted to mention all this point. But I will give you one suggestion here, and if you're very serious about learning AI and everything, let's say if you're watching this particular video, watching other video, or watching Udemy courses, whatever you are watching, highly I will suggest just spend at least 5 USD. Okay, go to OpenAI and then just add 5 USD. I think your 5 USD will be more than around like 500 INR rupees. And then what you have to do, right, you have to always use the 4o mini model whenever you're going to do anything, because this is only for learning. And believe me, this is going to help you to learn a lot of things. You will not be able to burn those tokens very easily, because 4o mini will take very less tokens. Okay, you can also check all of this, and this is what I also do. Okay, so I just wanted to mention all of this because the main idea of this project is to give you overall idea. It's not about creating a full stack project like how I usually do in other videos, like line by line coding, but this is to give you the whole idea of this AI ecosystem. So that is the reason highly recommended. Spend 500 rupees, add some credit in your OpenAI account API platform, and then you are going to get the API key and use that in multiple courses. Okay, so I'm pretty much sure you'll be able to even use this in so many times that even in 1 year you will not be able to burn it, unless you're using too much. Okay, so I just wanted to mention. So first, next step will be, then what we need to do, we need to create our main spec generation. Okay, so we are going to have some form from our UI which is going to actually create, or we are going to do what? We are going to do our OpenAI model call, and model is going to create some output. Okay, so this is what we are going to do. And also you can see that we have I've also divided this one into two parts. So first I'm going to create the actual the spec. Okay, so we need to add the OpenAI dependency and everything that I'm going to discuss, and I clearly mentioned that we are going to use the 4 mini model, and then we're going to create our actual repository, notification repository, all this. So first what are you going to do, right? So let's go to, let me quickly open this one. Okay, I'm just going to pause this here because I'm not going to show the API key because I think you all know, so that I can't show here. But before that, let me just quickly discuss that what actually we are going to do here. So first of all, you can see that we are creating the actual OpenAI helper here. Again, if you're using some free, change this one to Gemini. If you're using Grok, change this one to Grok. Okay, again I'm repeating, if you're using something else, you don't want to spend money, absolutely fine, you don't have to do that, but just change all of this. Okay, so you have to change this one to Gemini, everything. You have to be very, very careful here. So consider using Gemini, so you have to do Gemini spec generation service, Grok spec generation service. All other things you can keep it as is, it is whatever, you don't have to do much changes, but I'm going to explain that where you have to change. So first we are going to simply telling that you have to create a backend helper that turns a user features input into a structured technical specification. Okay, what is structured? Structured is nothing but structured output. So whenever we usually interact with a model, we usually tell models that okay, this is the input that I'm receiving, and in the output you're always going to give me the output in this certain format. So for example, let's say I'm giving a user name, user age, and user profile, user address, and then I'm just simply telling that okay, give me one particular summary from this information. So this summary property will be a structured output that we are going to get from the model. Okay, so model will always understand, okay, whenever I'm going to return the result, I always have to return the result in this summary property, summary colon this you're getting, and that is in a JSON object. Okay, this section only builds the generation module. This doesn't create the API routes. Okay, I clearly mentioned here. So we assume some of the things that we have already completed. Okay, server / source / leave, this is already exist, correct? So you have already the leave one. So here this already exists. OpenAI API key model values are already present in server /env. Means this is a manual work, but for this one you don't have to create a separate file because you clearly just mention here. These are the files allowed to change: package.json, env.example, and the openai.ts, which is going to actually create this helper. Okay, so this will be your helper that will stay in this particular folder. Then we have added some of the files that are not allowed to change. Again, this is the same thing that we have used. What will be the implementation steps? So first add the OpenAI dependency. If you're using Gemini, add here. Okay, so add Gemini dependency. If you're using Grok, add Grok dependency. Do not add LangChain AI SDK workers, queues, validation, all this. Update the env, and then I clearly mentioned that what actually you have to do. Very, very important. Okay, so for this one, what we'll usually have right now, remember one thing I wanted to mention, this is extremely important, what I'm going to explain in next 2-3 minutes, and that is, do not focus too much on that what actually we are building, focus on how we are building. So what I mean, for example, in this particular project we are building a spec generation. Now let's say instead of this you are building an e-commerce application. Now in the e-commerce application you are implementing a cart feature. Now for cart feature you are not going to have a title, property, problem description, or text tag. You're getting what I'm talking. For a cart property you're going to have that how many products are added in the cart, what is the price, and everything. So what I'm trying to explain is that this input and the output that you are going to generate, that depends on the project you are building. You can't always blindly copy paste this thing. This is only applicable for this particular project. Okay, so very, very important. So here I just mentioned that okay, whenever in the UI I'm going to give title, problem description, text tag, complexity, you are going to give me the output in this format. This is a structured output that we are giving here, extremely important. Okay, this is a very, very important step that you have to do whenever you're going to interact with any model. So let's say if you're using LangChain, LangGraph, whatever, right, normally what is recommended, right, you are going to use something like Zod Zod package. Zod, what it's going to do, it's going to give you the opportunity to create a model in the structured output format, so that whenever model is going to create the answer, it's going to create in that structured output only. That if you're telling model that I need a name property, I need a name, age, address, I don't need name as surname. So this is a very important concept. Okay, that's why I'm repeating here. If you're telling your model that okay, I need a name property, not surname, so this name will be added in this structured output. So whenever it's going to generate the name, whether the name is Sangam, in both the cases it's going to always generate in this particular format. Why? Because you're telling that whenever you're going to give me the property, you have to give me name, not surname. You're getting? Or let's say if we're giving age, which is let's say 60, you're not going to give me person's age, right? You have to give me always in this age property. So this is what structured output means you're simply telling this is the output I'm expecting. So here similarly I'm also telling that okay, this will be my overview, give me the API endpoints, database schema, front-end components, if any edge cases and implementation phases and estimated effort. So this is what I need. Okay, this is the, you create one function, so this is the function, and then I added some other property, right? So you read the model, this is defaulting to this model that we are using through a clear error, right? And then I've also added very important some of the prompt rules. The system prompt should say, so there is always system prompt and the user prompt. System prompt means you're going to, so if I try to, how I can explain, like very simple way, system prompt is going to tell your system or the model that okay, this is what I wanted to do. You are going to think yourself as a senior software architect, or you're going to think yourself as a sales manager or a marketing specialist. Okay, so something like this. So system prompt should say model is a senior software architect. This prompt should include all of this. Must return the valid JSON property. Outstep must match the structured output that we have created. Okay, so this is the structured output. Okay, and then after JSON response, read the message if the content is missing, all these normal things, right? For this one also, we're not going to add any test point. Do not call OpenAI automatically, and once it is verified, you can run this here. Yes, what will be expected? Server will start and no TypeScript or runtime errors will come from here, and then update the tracker. Why we are explaining all of this? Because this is very important whenever you're going to interact with, or you're going to call a model and you're going to get result. Okay, so for now let's do one thing. Let's rename, copy this, and then I'm just going to add it here, and then let's copy this. I think we will already explain all of this. Save this. Now one thing we have to do that is very important. So we have to add this, right? We have to add these two things. So I'll go to my env and then I'll paste it here. If you're using Gemini, change this one to Gemini, whatever you're using, and let's go to prompts, and then I'm just going to add it here, and then let's copy this one. So this also what I mentioned that okay, manual setup is already completed, OpenAI API key is present, and implement only this particular section. Which section? This section is the spec/this file, this one that we have added here. So now let's go to env. So I'll pause this video. I'm going to add the OpenAI API key, paste it here, and then we are going to run this particular prompt. Okay, for now I'm not going to show the API key for especially for the OpenAI. Alright, so I've added the API key here, that is below, okay, here. And now what we will do, right? So let's go here, go to prompts, let's copy this, and then we're going to run it here. Okay, so let's see. Alright, so you have to install OpenAI. Fine, so let's do it. Alright, so I think this is done. So you can also, I think it's already running. So let's see what actually it's created. So let's go here. Alright, fantastic. So it's created the input. This is what you're going to receive, output. And then let's take the API key if this is not present. Okay, so system prompt, which is very important. You are a senior software architect, generate a practical specification, all this you can verify, right? And then let's see what actually it's okay, it's created this function. Okay, so it's calling the openai.chat.completion.create method. Temperature it's given, model, the model that we are using, let's see what model. See, it's given the default as Photo Mini. Fantastic. And then at the end it's going to return the parts result, which is very important. The parsed result that is going to create, it's going to create, or it's going to structure in this particular format, which is our structured output. So that means this is actually done. Go to tracker, I think it's created, right? Okay, so section 4, this is completed, so this is also updated. So now what you're going to do, right? Let's go to our next part, which will be the creating the routes. So in the routes, now we have to do quite a few things. So first, let's close everything. So first of all, what are the things we have to create? So now we have to create our specs routes, which is going to actually call this particular helper, because we need to return our result back to our UI, correct? and also we're going to create our notification repository also. So first let's see what actually we are doing here. So I mentioned that create an authenticated backend API, because these routes that we are going to create, now this will be what authenticated means, not unauthorized user can access these particular routes, which is going to accept a request, save it as generating, triggers OpenAI generation in the background, and update the database when this finishes. Fantastic. So now current state, as usual, I already mentioned that OpenAI generation helper is completed. Just now you have done, tables are exist, and also this is exist in this so server/source/lib.openai. This is the file. So now next will be what are the file that will be allowed to change. Sorry guys, because of some noise I need to pause. Okay, so first let's see this one, right? So you have to this is already exist in this particular file that we have created. So what are the files that are allowed to change, right? So index you have to change, because you are going to add the routes that we are going to add in the root file. You can create specs route, right? Specs repository and the notification repository, and this is our middleware. Again, I mentioned some of the file that are not allowed to change, which is already present in the previous sections also. Alright, now this is very important, that what are the APIs now we need to build. So first of all, see, we need to have a post API. Now these things you have to consider the project that you are building, because these APIs will always differ based on the project to project, right? So first will be which is going to actually store our specs in our DB, right? So it's going to request this request body, correct, from our front end, which will be title, problem description, text, complexity, and notes. And this is what I have also given here, correct? So if you go to the, which one is that, OpenAI, right? So this is what we are receiving. Now this is going to actually response would return immediately that it's actually started generating. It's not yet completed. Okay, so it's returning one particular result in our front end. Very important. Do not wait for OpenAI before responding. What will be the implementation steps? I already mentioned that create the repository, right? Create some required function here. Now again, again I wanted to return that if you're I wanted to repeat that if you're not creating each and every line, it's absolutely fine. Even if you're giving overall idea, right, the agent is smart enough, it will be able to understand that what actually I'm trying to say. Until unless you're not giving any information, then it will be problematic. So I clearly mentioned that create is going to insert all of this, and first time this will be generating and it's going to return this. And then we have a mark specs ready. It is going to update that when the status will be ready, and if this is failed, the status will be failed. Okay, so we added some rules here. And then we have the repository, notification repository that we have to create, which is going to add our notification helpers. Okay, what are the function we need? Create notification. One will be create specs ready notification, or if the spec generation is failed from the OpenAI, so it's going to create specs failed notification. Okay, keep the message simple. Okay, just added some examples here. Again, this is the rules. Now here I created specs routes that we need. So we only have a add only post route, right? When mounted under specs, this becomes /specs. Then this is some of the route behavior, which is actually important. Now these things you should actually mention when you're creating. For example, these actually need require auth middleware. Why? If you're not telling that, okay, this is a protected route, your agent will actually don't know the features or the requirement, right? So you have to mention this. Read the body field, perform simple validation, insert the row with spec generating, create the initial notification, and at the end return it immediately. Okay, and start async generation after the request path is completed. What will be the async? This one I already mentioned that if the on success, this will be updated to ready, or on failure, this will be updated to failed. Okay, I added some implementation rule also here. You can go through. What will be the mount spec route, which you have to update in your root route, which is this one. So you have the route, right? So this one you have to add here, just like we added the auth routes. Okay, do not remove the existing this one. And then I added error handling rules and some other property, right? So do not add any test endpoint here for this one. And then you're going to update the tracker file. So this will be the next file that we have, which is going to actually talk to your OpenAI helper. It's going to create your spec repository, notification repository, create the spec routes, and it's going to mount that route in our root route. So now let's do one thing. Let's rename, copy this, and then we're going to just paste it here. Save this, and let's go to the prompt. And then we'll just add it here, prompts. Okay, so save this. So it's going to go to this file, it's going to read it, and then it's going to implement. So we'll copy this and let's enter. Fantastic. So you can see that this is now completed. So we'll see. So first we'll go here. So this is a spec repository, right? So we have the create spec. So this is going to store in our Postgres, right? And then we have the mark specs ready. Remember we mentioned this, or this will be filled. So either it will be ready or it will be filled. So this is that one. Then you have a notification repository. It's going to create the notification, create specs ready notification, or create spec failed notification. Also I think we have created our routes, right? So in the routes, let's see what are the routes it's created. So first of all we have the run specs generation, which is going to call this one we have created, right, in the last section. So this is going to call that, and then it's going to do this one, create the notification, or it's going to create the spec field, or it's going to create the spec failed notification. Okay, and then we have another post route, and then you can see that we are going to call this create spec here, which is going to call this spec repository. Is going to actually store in our Postgres. So this is what we are doing, and this is going to create the notification here. And I think that's it that we have in this particular two file, right? And let's go to the main route, and you can see that we have this one. And also one more thing you can verify, go here, so go to routes. So you can see that it has the required auth, correct? Because this is what I need, right? So not every user can access this, so this is only will be accessed by the auth users. So this is a protected route. So that means this is now completed. So what will be our next step? So the next step will be, now we are going to also implement our dashboard APIs. Now this is a simpler one. Why this is a simpler one? Here what we are going to do, right, we are going to create one dashboard overview API where we are going to render each and every details, that how many specs you generated and all those things. Okay, now for this one I added so let's see what are the things I've added here, so you'll understand. Now it will be easy to understand because you already know that what actually you're doing in the previous section. So you're creating the spec. If it is completed, it will be status as ready, it will be stored in your DB. If it is failed, it will be also stored in your DB. You're going to create a success notification, or you're going to create a failed notification. So first of all, I mentioned that add authenticated backend read APIs. Again, this is a read API, as I mentioned. This is not a write APIs needed by the front-end pages. It's going to list all the specs, view one spec, dashboard stats, list your notification, and mark notification as read. This section is backend only. Again, the structure that we are using, okay, you see that the same structure we are using in every file. Current state, what are the things that we've implemented previously. Okay, so I mentioned that, okay, spec repository is already present, notification repository is present, spec routes also is already present. What are the files will be allowed to change? Now here you have to pause and you have to think whether you'll be able to understand that, okay, how many files I have to change if I have to create a dashboard API. So first of all, you have to create a dashboard routes, because if you go here, right, you don't have that route. So that means this is a new file. So that's the reason I mentioned that, okay, you have to create a dashboard route. So again, agent will understand that if this file is not present, it's going to create that particular file. Okay, so then we have this file already, spec repository, notification repository, and then you have to create a dashboard repository also. Then again, I added that how many files you are not allowed to change and how many API builds will be in this particular section. So one will be to get your specs, right? So this will be auth required. What will be the response? These things are actually important. Okay, this is where I want all of you to actually mention that, okay, how you want your data in the front end. If you're not mention all these, right, instead of this take stack, what it can do, right, it can also return take stack info. I'm just giving this example, right? So here you should have that control, that you are telling your model or agent that you're building that, okay, this is what actually I wanted to return. So take stack complexity status and created it. Okay, do not include generated content in the least response. Very, very important, extremely important. Why? Because when I'm actually getting the list, I don't want to render the generated content. So here I have to mention this, or else what it's going to do, it's going to get the data, it's going to return each and everything that that particular row includes in your Postgres. So this is a negate situation or a condition. Then to get the details, so here you can see that I mentioned that generated content we have to return. See, you can see all this, right, by reading. If this spec doesn't exist, return 404. Even it's going to do that, but still you should mention these small lines. Okay. Now I'll be very honest. No, not everyone is going to be this much honest with you. I'm going to tell you one thing. Even if you think that I actually created this particular data, you think I have written all of this line by line. You know, right? Absolutely not. That means I've actually asked some other model, or sorry, other AI, for example, let's say either Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini to create this particular doc. But if I go there and then ask ChatGPT, consider that, okay, I have to create one particular YouTube video and then I have to create a project on this, create a spec. Do you think that it's going to create all this file? No, right? So what I'm trying to explain, that your thinking process, whatever you're thinking, consider if the ChatGPT is not there, Gemini is not there, Grok is not there, Claude is not there, how you're going to implement all these things? If you actually how can I explain, like crack this particular code, right, you will be able to understand that how you can use these AI tools. So what I'm trying to say, that if I'm telling ChatGPT to create this particular doc because I don't want to write all of this, I have to mention ChatGPT that, okay, I'm creating a project. This project will be having this many models. This is going to have an ID. This is going to have a title property. This is going to have a problem description. So what I'm trying to say, that ChatGPT is not going to decide that these are properties that I'm going to have. I'm going to explain ChatGPT that, okay, I'm creating a particular YouTube video. I have to create this particular documentation. This is the properties that I'm going to have. This is the APIs that I want to have. Based on this, you now create this particular spec. See, this is a rule that I'm telling everyone is following. Okay, I can guarantee not every YouTuber or whoever is creating course, they are going to mention all of this. I'm being very honest, because no YouTuber is going to write all of this line by line. Okay, this is very important. Why I'm telling all of this? Because when you are learning, right, I want all of you to apply your own thinking. Whatever tools you're using, for example, let's say you're using ChatGPT to implement a particular project, okay, Codex or Claude, whatever. Don't ask that create an e-commerce project. Instead, what you should do, right, instead you should explain that these are the APIs my e-commerce is going to have. Break this particular project into 10 parts. In every chat, I'm going to implement one particular feature. One feature always, next feature always come after the previous feature. So one feature is connected to another feature. So first we have to implement the previous one, then we have to implement the next one. So these things you have to mention AI tools. You're getting. So I just wanted to mention all of this, that how I created all of this here. Okay, so this is what we have to have. Then we have the dashboard stats. Why? Because we need this, because we have to render the dashboard details, right? How many cards, how many specs we have created, how many notifications we have. This is also auth required. If there are no specs, return 0 count on null values that doesn't exist. Then one will be to get the notification, one will be to read the notification, which will be patch request, right? Again, I mentioned here, right, I'm not explaining auth required and all of this, and I added some of the implementation steps also. These you can, like, if you want, you can add this, but I will suggest that try to add all of this. So add these helpers, right? Extend the notification repository. Why extend? Because this is already exist, this file, so you just have to add these particular helpers. One will be through list, one will be to mark. Then you create this dashboard repository. This is a new file, and update all the spec routes file, because in the spec route files you have to add all of this, right? And then you are going to keep the existing routes. What else? You have to create this file, dashboard routes, because this is a new file. Create the notification routes file, and then you are going to mount all of this in your index file. Same thing, index file means you have to add all of this here, right? So this is what we are doing. Error handling rules I have added here, and then you are going to verify. So for now we are going to run only npm run dev. What will be expected? Server will start, no TypeScript errors, and you're going to update the tracker. So this will be your dashboard APIs that we are going to build. So first let's rename this, copy this, and then you're going to add. So next I will go to the prompt. So let's go here, and then I'm just going to paste it in the prompts. Okay, so again, just read this file, implement the section 6, and do not implement any front-end related things here for now. So copy this, and then we're going to run it. Fantastic. So you can see that it passes. If you notice in middle, right, there was some error, so it's automatically fixed that TypeScript error. So let's go here. So you can see that it's actually added this let me just close this. So the spec list item, spec list row, spec list details. So you have the list spec by user that I mentioned, right? Then we have the find spec by ID. This is for the details one. So it's created these two. Go to notification. So it's going to create the list notification. So we have the list notification by user. So it's going to list and then mark notification as read, which is going to update the notification. Okay. Fantastic. And then next we have the dashboard one, right? So in the dashboard we have only one, which is going to give you the total specs this week, most used, complexity, most used. So it's going to generate some of the things by itself, which is fine. And then it's going to actually create all of this, right, by writing all the SQL queries and everything. I'm not going into all these details because you can just read all of this. So it's going to create that particular dashboard route, the helper that we need, that we are going to use in our routes file. Now let's go to the specs route. So it's going to create that, right? So let's go at the end. I think this one we need. So this is what it's using, list specs by users, right? So this is what it's actually used here, and this will be by ID, these two things. Next we have the dashboard. So this is only one, so it's going to use the get dashboard stats, which we created here in this repository. And then we are going to have our notification also. So in the notification we have created the list one, and one will be to update, so which will be read, these two. And I think this is done, and it's going to mount this here. So we have the dashboard and the notification here. Fantastic. And you can see that this is already running. Alright, so I think with this the backend is now completed, and you can see that how brilliant structure that we have created. Okay, so you see the folder structure. All depends on how you are creating the specs or the features, okay, or how you are guiding your agent to implement all of this. So now, okay, I'm going to tell you one very important thing, that why I mentioned that this is not a vibe coding. Sometimes what I'm saying, right, I also read some blogs and everything, that some people who don't have any prior knowledge on like tech or everything, they're creating this kind of vibe coding application and doing some very big blunder. Why this is not a vibe coding? Because here we actually know what we are building. We know our API contracts, that these many APIs will be there. This is how we are going to do it. So that means even if this agent is not there, if ChatGPT is not there, if Gemini is not there, I still will be able to implement the same project by myself. You are getting what I'm trying to say. So this is where you have to be in that particular place. So you know things, you are just using AI to speed up your development process, but at the same time you are also doing the things, or you will be able to clearly understand that what actually you are doing in the code. So with this, now next will be our front end. Okay, so front end. So first we are going to start with creating our API helpers and types, which will be simpler one. So first let's rename this, and then I'm going to copy this, and then I'll just go to my specs and then add it here. Okay, so for this one, what I have to do, first of all, I mentioned that we are going to create our API clients and the shared types. Okay, so this is only for that. What will be goal? You're going to create the front-end API helpers, shared TypeScript types used by upcoming pages. Okay, this is only front-end. What is current state? We already have a client which is an existing Next.js app. SetCN is already installed with a theme, right? Backend section are already completed. Backend base URL is this one. This is also important because you have to mention backend uses an HTTP cookie named token. Frontend should call backend directly. Do not create Next.js API proxy routes. Extremely important. I think this part I've already explained, that when you are going to interact with your API and everything, there are n number ways your agent can implement. That agent can use fetch, Axios, some custom hooks, proxy routes, whatever, right? So here we are simply mentioning that we are going to call the backend directly. How? See, very important. Okay, this part you have to understand all of this. So I mentioned that what are the files is allowed to change. One will be your env.example. Now next is client/source/lib/server.ts. Now this is your server related API call helper. This is your client side related API call helper, and this will be your types file. Some mention some of the things I mentioned, that files that are not allowed to change, that backend file you are not going to change anything. Any route pages under these UI components and SADScene UI generated files, which is this one. You're not going to change. Why this is actually important? Because sometimes it can change the CSS file which you don't want because you are using a SADScene theme. Okay, so this is also very, very important. First, you're going to create and update the env.example file. Do not add any other things here. Next will be create the types. Now how many types you need? Now this is where you have to be little careful that okay, how many things you have created in the backend, so that all those types you need in the front end also. For example, if you go to, let's go to our auth routes, right? So in the auth routes, let's see the user, right? So this user, what are the things that you are going to return for this, or what are the things that user is going to have these properties? So those things you're going to mention that I need a user type, I need the specs status, spec complexity, spec list item. Now these things will differ based on the project to project. Now here we'll use the backend steps for completion section. Then I mentioned that expected some enum like union, which will be your generating radial field. Specs complexity is small, medium and large, right? And then I also added that now create the client side API helper, which is only for client components. This will be your type. And then also I mentioned that one will be for your backend, which is server side, right? And here I also mentioned this will be server side API fetch. So you have to mark this module as import server only. You're going to use the next public API URL, read the incoming cookies, forward the cookies, set all of this. I just mentioned these, I mentioned for your understanding also, so that you can see what actually you're doing here. You don't have to mention each and everything because agent is going to anyways, is going to handle if there is no response, is going to return the null anyways. So still I have added all of this. For this one, you're going to add credentials include. Why? Because we're using cookies. Default content type will be application/JSON, throw a readable error, return the parse JSON st. So this will be generic because you don't know the type, and keep the helper generic and small. And I think this is what you have done. Do not add any page level logic, and at the end you are going to run the npm run dev. So this is what we are doing in this particular file. Okay, I hope this is clear. So now let's copy this and then we will go here, right? So this is the file, paste it. Let's go to our prompts, copy, and then we'll go to prompts, add this, and then I'm just going to copy and paste it here. Okay, and then let's run this. Fantastic. So you can see that this is now completed. So now it's time to open our client side and see what are the things it's created. So it has env.example. Now for this one, we can also create one env file here, and then you can just copy paste the same. So let's see. So in the source, first we'll go to our live. We have a client, server and utils. We have a type, and this is our index, right? So you can see that it's actually created because it has the context, right? It will get the context from here also. It has the context. So in the context, you're going to have all of the skills and everything, right? So now it's created all the types, and you can just match the types with the backend types that we have created. It will be similar. In the client, we have the client side helper, right? So let's see, we have a credentials include, only the important part we're going to do, and then it's going to throw the error, and it's going to return this one as a promise of this generic, the type. In the server, it's going to import this, get the cookies from next header. So let's see, it's getting the cookies, get the token. Okay, if header not has content type, it's going to set it, it's going to set the token, and it's going to do the API call. Okay, and then it's going to return it. Fantastic. And in the utils, I think this is already there, and I think we don't have any other changes, right, for this. So it's created the source types, client, server, package.json, and update the tracker. So this is done. Okay, so this is only what we need to do for this particular section. Next, what we need to do right now, we are going to implement our layout. So in the layout, now we are going to implement some of the pages. For example, our first will be, we need to implement our navbar, which will be common number that we are going to implement. Now here I will suggest all of you that instead of using the same thing, right, not for backend, I'm talking about the front end, so that you will get some more hands-on. Instead of following what I'm doing exactly, you can do some experiment. For example, if I'm using the navbar component in every component, okay, instead what you can do, right, you can create a common component, common layout, and you can use the navbar only once at once. So this kind of experiment you can do. Okay, so first of all, let's do one thing. First, let's rename this, copy this, and we'll go to specs, and then I'm also going to do the same thing here because we also need here. So first of all, let's see what are the things we have to do for this. So first of all, we are going to implement our app layout, navbar, and the auth state. So first of all, what is the current state that is assumed? So here we already have the front-end API client and server, client helpers, server helpers for our API call that we have added just now, and the shared types. This file export the server API fetch. This is for your client-side API fetch, and this is your user type that includes. Backend endpoints already exist, these three. SADCN is already installed, and the theme tokens are already present here. So it can actually go through this global CSS file. What will be the file that are allowed to change? Very important, because if you're not mentioning, it's going to go through each and every file. So it's actually important. If the file is present, it's going to modify the file. If the file is not present, for example this one, it's going to create the file. File that are not allowed to change, I mentioned here that you are not going to change anything inside this directory. You're not going to change any route pages, right? For example, your app.page.tsx, because we are going to create later, and also any of the helper files that we have created just now. What will be the implement step? You update the layout, make the root layout fetch the current user on the server. Use this because this is the endpoint that we have. What will be the rules? If this returns null, treat the user as unauthenticated. Extremely important. Do not redirect from the root layout. Render the navbar above the page content. Keep the main content wrapper simple, and do not add any page specific sections. Again, this part I mentioned, right? You can also remove this. Why? Because I already mentioned this, I added just for the video explanation. When you're implementing, you don't have to actually give all of this. It is smart enough. It's going to create all of this by itself. Preserve existing font setup and metadata if already present. Okay, now very important, you're going to create the navbar.tsx. Create an auth ever navbar component. Okay, so this is going to receive a property which will be the user property. What will be the unauthenticated state and authenticated state? Now these things you have to mention. I'll be very, very clear, because you have to mention agent when you're implementing a front end that, okay, I have a navbar. What will happen if the user is authenticated? Do I need to render a button? Do I need to render a drop down? You have to mention, right? Your agent doesn't know what your requirement is. So for unauthenticated state, you're going to show logo text, and there will be one button, sign in with Google. Okay, sign in button should navigate to next public/API URL/auth/Google. So it will redirect to the Google login page. This will be your fallback base URL. What will be the authenticated state? Means once the user is authenticated, logo text link to this, nav link to this, means it will go to that page when we are going to implement. Nav link to this dashboard, small user identity, which is going to render one image. Otherwise, just simply render some fallback, and there will be sign out button. What will be the sign out behavior? You can just mention that, okay, you have to call this API, which is going to, once this API call is successful, it's going to redirect the user to the home page, or use this or router.push, or you can also use router.refresh also here. Okay, some styling rules: use only existing theme tokens that we have. Uses classes like this. Why I mentioned here? Because you're not going to use something like this. Okay, I'll do BG green 50, so I don't want like this. I want to use the existing standard classes that I have, that is going to pick from the theme that I am creating, or I'm using. Do not use random tailwind classes, and this will be the suggested navbar layout. So I simply mentioned that how you're going to do it. Streaky, normal top bar, border bottom, max width, logo will be on the left, nav sections will be on the right, just as simple. Scope limits. So it's going to, I'm giving some restrictions. Again, do not create notification bell yet, do not protect the routes yet, do not create any home page and everything, do not test the full login flow here. Feature will be added in the later section, and you're going to run the npm run dev and update the tracker. So this is what you're going to do in this particular section, okay, which is only going to create the layout and the navbar related information. So now let's copy these, and then first I'll go to the specs, So this will be my specs. Save this, and then I'm going to go to my app layout navbar, copy this, and then I'm simply going to paste it in my prompts. Save, and then we'll paste it here. Alright, so now this is completed. So let's see what are the files it's created. So first of all, let's start with the layout page. So you can see that I think, okay, so it's using the navbar, it's fetching the current user using the server method that we have created, and then it's returning the children. In the navbar, let's see, so first of all it should be receiving the prop, which is correct, and then I think it should check, okay, so it's checking if the user is present. It's going to render this, which will go to the specs page. If the user is present, render the specs or dashboard, or else you're going to render the login, right? And if you go here, you can see that we are getting this UI. Fantastic. So now if I click on this, so what will happen, right? It should go to /auth/Google. So it should go to the Google login page, correct? So let's see if I click here. So you can see that it's going to this page. So that means this is working fine. Okay. So till this part we have done only this much because it's not going to work. So we need to now implement the rest of the section. So first, before we'll check that, let's implement the public homepage. So public homepage means we need to implement these sections. So this part. So first let's start with this, copy this. So let's create this first file. Let's go to specs, and then we'll create this, and also I need to use the same in my prompts. Alright, so first of all, what we need to do, this will be a simpler one. See, this one, you whatever you want, you can just change the style, right? So the design, I mean, for example, I clearly mentioned that we have the navbar with already handles the sign in and the sign out state, right? We already have this page, right? This is already present from the Next.js starter, right? So if we go to Next.js starter, which is this one, so these pages already exist. Search is already installed. Use the theme tokens from your global CSS file, and frontend call directly using when linking to Google Auth. Some of the files you are allowed to change because we are working with homepage, so you have to only change the page.tsx. And then I added the same thing, that which files you don't have to change. First of all, what we mentioned that, okay, first what you have to do, the project that we are building so far, you have to explain that what actually this project is doing, and how it will direct user to start with this Google Auth. I'm going to give some positioning, right, that how you're going to render it. And then I just added a hero section. That again, these things I'm not explaining, like you can just change all of this style whatever you want. The badge text, main headline, this will be supported text, there will be a CTA, all these things, right? And then also just mention that clean 2-column desktop layout. If it stays readable, left side just render a headline CTA, right side render the product preview. Okay, so you're going to render some cards and everything. So now I mentioned that we are going to add 3 cards. One will be to describe the features, AI is going to generate the structure and use the spec to build, and all these details, right? I am not explaining all of this, you can just go through here, right, whatever you have done. So what it's going to expect, it's going to expect homepage is going to build successfully, navbar still appears from the shared layout, and also no backend changes needed, and update the tracker. Now one thing you have to check, that in your UI you can see that we have this button.tsx. So what you can do, right, so you have 2 options. Okay, I'm just going to mention this one. Either you can mention that, okay, I don't have the card component installed yet. I'm talking about the SADCN card. Okay, so you can just mention all of this here. So it's going to do that. If not, what you can do, right, you can also manually install, and then you can mention, because it will automatically understand if that particular component is installed where in your components UI folder. You're getting what I'm talking about, because these things are important, because if either you have to mention or you have to manually do it. So for this one, what you're going to do, right, because there are 2 options, maybe let's do one thing. Let's not use any card component from SADCN, or you can also do that. For now, let's give agent that decision whether it's going to install or it is going to create the card using simple JSX with Tailwind classes. So let's see how this is going to work. But again, you have that option. You can also take this one as a homework, that what you can do, right? You can just install that SadSend card component, and when you mention, right, that add 3 cards, you can just simply mention here one line that, okay, I already have the card component installed, this is the path, use that particular component, and you'll see that it's going to use the same. Okay, so for now let's not do that. So let's copy this and let's go to the specs and let's see how it's creating, if any changes needed. So we're going to do that. So paste it here, and then we'll go to our prompts. Let's go to this, and then I'm going to copy this. Let's go to our specs, and then I'll paste it here. Now let's save this. So what I mentioned again, you follow this particular file, implement only this section, do not add any other specs, dashboard, notification, all these things here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'll just paste it and let's see. Alright, so I think this is done. So first let's see here, let's see what is happening. Refresh this, and you can see that it's created. Fantastic. So now okay, we'll see that what are the pages it's created. So it's created only one page. This is what we mentioned right there. Okay, this is, now again, I'm not explaining each and every line here. You can, again, I mentioned right that all these things you can just change. So you can see that it's created one left side, that is a CTA. On click of this, it will go to this login page. Fine, this is happening. On the right side you have the details, and then some of the details is always automatically added here. It's up to you how you're going to do that. Now how you're going to do it, in the sense I'm talking about, if you want, you can change the design of this page, right? It's up to you. If you notice, this one is very important because this is the theme that we have used, and this actually is using the global.css, these classes only. So it's not actually using some custom classes, which is also very important. So you go here, you can see right how it's using all of this. So now what do we have to do next? First we'll see this, right? There might be some issue, it's possible, but first we'll see that what is happening here. So I'm going to go this, let's select this particular account, let's do continue, and you can see that awesome, it's automatically working, man. Fantastic. So it's going to the dashboard page. How this is happening, copy this, go here, and then go to search, and here let's see this. So we have the dashboard, right? Not this one, not this one. So we have to go here. Let's, how to do that, man? I only wanted to check in this one. Okay, find in folder. So this is where I wanted to check. Okay, let's do this. Not here, let's check here inside source. Oh no, I'm doing wrong. So let's go to the server. Go to your auth routes, and here you search for /dashboard. So it's going to this dashboard, correct? So what will happen, right? When the callback is successful, it will redirect the users to the dashboard page, which makes sense. This is what actually happening here. So go here. So specs page we don't have, that is correct. So if you home page, we are going to this home page. You go to application, go to cookie, you can see the token is present. Fantastic. So now we have to create the specs and the dashboard page, but you are getting right that whatever you have done, it's working absolutely fine. So this is now created. So you haven't write a single line of code so far, but definitely some of the things you have done, which is fine, but this is working absolutely fine. So what will be the next step? Next step will be, now let's start with implementing the specs page, and then we'll move to the dashboard one. Alright, so now let's start with this particular page. Right now we have to take things little slowly because we have to do quite a few things here. Okay, now we are going to understand that how actually we are going to do the integration with our backend. So first let's copy this, and let's go to specs, and then I'm going to add the this list page, and also we're going to add the prompts here. Okay, so first of all, what we have to do here, right? So we have to, when you're going to come to this particular page, you have to first fetch the list of specs, right? And also let's say we are going to have some kind of thing where we will be able to see the details, and also we have to have some kind of form where we are going to do what, where we will be able to create our new specs form, correct? So let's see what actually we have to do for this particular page slowly. So let's go let's go to this page. So first, I already mentioned, very important, that these will be authenticated specs list page. Okay, so we're going to take this one little slowly so that you can actually understand how you can work with CRUD. Now why CRUD is very important, because at the end I always mention that every feature you are going to create in your website or wherever you are working, that will be CRUD. So it will be create, update, read or edit, correct? Although in this one we are not going to have any edit or delete, and there is a reason that I'm going to explain later. So that edit and delete functionality I'm going to give you as a homework. Okay, so first we have to mention that what actually this page is going to do. So this page shows the user generated specs. So user will be generating the specs, so that we are going to render in this particular page. It also supports a lightweight polling, because we are not going to have any WebSocket and those kind of things here, while any specs is still generating, and provide a clear entry point to create a new spec. So this was what I was talking about, right? So we have to have some kind of mechanism where there will be some button which will help us to create a new spec. This section is front end only. Now what is the current state that we have to assume that is completed? So first of all, that we have to mention that okay, front end API clients are there, layout navbar is completed, public homepage is also completed. Backend get /auth me exist, very important, because we have to see whether the user is authenticated or not, and backend get /specs exist. So this is the endpoint that I need to do to fetch the list of specs, correct? Then I mentioned that this is our server helper, client side API helper, and this is the types. And again I mentioned this is our global CSS. What are the files that are allowed to change? So you have to create a new page. So you can see that I mentioned that this will be a new page, right? So it is going to check that if this page is present, or else it's going to create a new specs page. Also, I clearly mentioned that you are going to create a spec card component and a specs polling client component, which you are going to use in this page component, right? Now you also mentioned that what are the files that you are not allowed to change, all the backend related files, and also your front-end side API helper files, and also shared type files, and also global CSS, which is also very important. So now first of all, what do you have to do? So what will be the behavior? So you have to check auth check. So in this page you have to check that if the API user is authenticated or not. If not, you are going to redirect to the home page. Okay, if the user exists, you are going to fetch the specs using your endpoint. Now this endpoint will be the endpoint that we have created. So we'll go to specs, and if you go here, right, so you have the list specs, this one I can see in the specs. So where we have that list specs by user, correct, this one slash, and if you go here, so you have the /specs. So this will be your endpoint. Render the specs list, right? Use Next.js redirect from this initial data fetch. This page should fetch the initial specs server side. Why? Now this is very important, because we are going to fetch the initial data from the server side. What will happen, we are also going to have a new component which is going to create a new spec. Once the new specs will be created, we need to update the list of specs, right? So let's say now I have 2 specs, I'm adding a new one. So now the specs will become how much? 3. So I need to again fetch the updated one, correct? So that's why I mentioned the initial one should fetch the page should fetch the initial specs on the server side. If the backend returns null, you are going to treat this one as an empty array. Do not add any loading skeletons in this section, because the initial render is server side. What will be the component? So this will be reusable spec card component, which is going to render title, text tag, complexity, status, badge, and created date. Okay, and this view spec, so there will be some button or some link which will go to the details page, correct? So this will be your details page, which you have to mention. If you don't give the path, so it can create any path, correct? So you have to mention it here. This is the status display. Of how it's going to take the context, you might be thinking, because you have clearly mentioned this is our types, right? This is our types. So in these types, when it's going to check the spec list item, if you go to the types, let's go to the client side and go to types. So it will be able to understand, okay, these many things I have, so I have to render all of this. Okay, so everything is linked. So this is what I mentioned. So this will be the complexity display, and this will be the styling. So you're going to use the theme tokens. Just use rounded 2XL border, all of these or similar. Use text muted foreground for secondary text. Use the primary colors for primary accents if needed. Do not use random color classes. I always mention all of this in my all projects whenever I wanted to keep my color uniform. Okay, So these all are restriction important. Do not add edit and delete buttons. I kept this on intentional. Do not add generated output rendering here. Why? Now see, if you remember in the backend, right, when you have implemented this, so let's see the auth, sorry, not specs routes, let's specs by user. And if you notice this on here, right, so we are actually only returning the id, title, text tag, text tag, complexity, status and created at. We are not returning the generated content on the least one, but we are returning this one in the details one, correct? If you go here actually you are returning this. So that's why I mentioned that you are not going to render the generated output rendering content when you are going to render the list page. What will be the polling component? So this will be simple polling. First of all, remember when you are going to create the spec, first time it will create the status as generating. This is what we have created, right? We also have mentioned this on here. In the logic also you can see. Let's go to specs routes. Okay, let's go here. Okay, let me just search it. I just wanted to check here, not here. I wanted to search in my server. So this will be generating. In these specs routes. So let's go to, this is in the dist folder. This is, we don't need. When you go to source, routes and specs, this is what we need. So when it's going to create, so it's going to generating the specs. So first time it's going to generate and then we are going to return that immediately. I think we have also created this one here. Let me just check. Generating, right? This one. So create authentication API. This, let's go to next. This is what we need. So first of all, it should return immediately, right? So you're going to return status as generating and then it's going to wait. Once it is successful, either it will be success or it will be failed. If you remember, we have implemented this. So this is what I mentioned, that check if any spec has status equal to generating. If at least one spec is generating, poll this one. So you have to poll every 4 seconds. We are going to fetch this. Okay. Stop polling when no spec is generating and show the current list as this one using this spec card component. First of all, this will be a client component. Keep polling logic using use effect. Clean up interval properly. If polling fails once, do not crash the page, log the error, all these things. Do not add toast notification yet and do not use any external polling libraries. This is also important. And then I also added some of the be aware that how our list page will look like. So here how we are going to render. So I clearly mentioned that this will be your title, description, new spec. So there will be one button. On click of that, I'll go to the new specs page. Okay. And then if no spec, so empty card. If spec exists, then you're going to render. How will be the grid? So this will be desktop 2 column, mobile will be 1 column. And then I just added some of the styling rules here. So I think if this part you already know that we are going to avoid the tailwind classes, right? And then I also added some scope limit also, that do not build the form yet, details page, because this all will come later. Dashboard page, notification bell, auth, callback page, backend changes, edit or delete or search or filter UI, and then you're going to verify. So this is what will be our list page. So this will be the first thing, although currently we don't have any specs created, but first we have to create this. So let's copy this and then we'll go here and then I'm going to paste it, save this. Let's go to prompts, so the specs list, and then we'll go here, paste it. So again, this is the same thing, that you are going to follow this whatever is mentioned here, and then I'm just going to paste. And alright, so I think this is completed. So let's go here. First of all, let's see what you're getting. We have no specs yet. Fantastic. So first we'll go to this page and we'll see that everything is working or not. First it's calling the user information. If not, it will redirect to the home page, and then it's getting the specs, right? And then it's created all of this. We have a button. I'm just checking the main thing. Okay, we can't go each and every line of code. We'll go to the new spec, which will go to the new specs page, which we don't have now. Fine. Then it's going to check if spec is present, then render, or else render empty. So you don't have anything else. Fantastic. It's created one specs card component, right? and then also we have a specs polling component that we are going to test later. For now, until unless we are going to create a new spec, we can't test it, right? So let's move on to the next one, which will be creating a new spec. So first, let's go this. Now this also will be a very important one. Let's copy this and we'll paste it here, and we are also going to paste it. So first of all, what we have to do, so again, this will be authenticated page, right? This page lets a signed user submit a feature using this and redirect back to the specs, where the existing polling page can show the generated status. So that means it will go to that page, we are going to create it, and then it will come back to this page and we are going to show the status with the card view, correct? First of all, again, I'm not explaining this, right? This is same whatever you have done here. That what are the things you have done, we just have to mention that which one you have to use. Okay, one more thing, even if you don't mention this, right, this content user spec complexity, if you're giving this context also, your agent will be able to understand, but I'm just giving too much detailed information for your understanding. How many files you can change? One will be, first of all, you go to your client side and then you created the specs, right? So inside this I have to create a new page here. Why? Because if you go to this page and you see that where it is going to /spec/new, so that means it will come inside this. So that's why I mentioned that you have to create a new page, correct? Also you have to create a spec form component, correct? Because we will be having a form component there, right? Now I mentioned that backend file inside the server and all of these, and then you are not going to change all of this, right? Same thing. First of all, this will be a page route. So this is the new page. What will be the behavior? Again, you have to fetch the current user. If it is not, then you're going to redirect to the home page. If the user is exist, then what you're going to do, render the create new spec page, correct? Now component will be the new page. So you're going to just there will be some options, so that once I'll go to the new page, I will be having some back button or something, so that I can come back to this page here. Okay, so that is the reason I've added this. This is the title, create new spec, short description, and then I mentioned that you can just keep this one as center like that, and then I just mentioned that you're going to render the actual form. Okay, so now what do you have to do? I also mentioned, let's see, do not submit directly from the server page. This is correct because this will be a client component. You're going to add the client, and this will be the form field. So you're going to have a feature title, this will be input, and this will be required yes, problem, which will be description, text area yes, text tag, text input yes. So all of these form fields that we have, right? And then what I have to do, this thing you can mention, or else if you go to your types, it will be able to understand from these also, these types. Okay, so now first of all we have to mention that this will be a form, so you have to prevent the default submit, builds request body from local state, do a simple client side check, and then you call the API. So what you have to do, you have to do a client API fetch, you're going to pass the ID, status will be generating, and this will be your API call, right? Also, if you don't want to do this, what you can do, right, you can just give the backend context. So backend context means if you go to your backend route where you have created that particular route, the one that you're going to call here, you can also mention that it will be able to understand that, okay, what are the things I have to call. So what I'm trying to explain, even if you don't pass it, you just give the backend context, it will be able to understand. And then I just given that while submitting, disable the submit form, this will be the button text. On success, it will redirect to this page, correct? From the add page, it will redirect to this particular page. On failure, just render a simple error message. Use router from next navigation, and then again the same styling rules. Then you do not build this list changes, details page, dashboard page, all of this, that we don't have to do all of this here. Okay, and then you're going to verify. So the main expected will be, this is going to create the new page, unauthenticated user will redirect to this page, form is going to submit a new spec in this particular route, and successfully submit will redirect to the home page, and no backend changes are needed. So now let's copy this, and then we'll go here, paste it. Let's go to create specs page, and then we'll just add it here, or not this. Have to delete this. Go to create specs page. We already have, man. Okay, let's copy this and then we'll paste it here. So now again the same thing, that you follow this particular file and implement whatever we have just discussed. So let's see what is happening. Alright, so you can see that this is now completed. So how many files it's created? So this is one, this is the new file. So if I click here, right, so it will go to this page. You can see that we are getting feature, title, description, text tag, complexity, additional notes. Go back and you can see that this is looking very clean, and also it's created the actual form component. Okay, so here you can just go through all of this. Again, if you want, you can just install the SADSEN component, or just take this on as a homework. What you can do, right, in this spec where you have added all of these, right, so maybe where you can add it, I'm going to give you the exact place. All right, here, so you mention, right, that create the client component. Either you can mention here that already installed SADSEN component, input, select area, select text area, use those. Okay, or else you can also mention the same thing here also, current state assumed. Why? Because in this current state assumed, it will be able to understand that what are the things, or what is our current state. So here also you can mention that I've installed all these SADSEN components, just use the same. Please try to do it by yourself. You'll see that you are going to learn a lot of things. If I'm not doing intentionally so that you can do experiment, I can easily do it now also. So try to use the SADSEN components. Okay, here I also showed you that how you can install. You already have installed. You just have to mention that details here, and then try to run the prompt once again. Okay, so that is one thing. So this is this part is done. So creating this one is done. Next, let's move to the next one, which will be our view, not this one, view spec output. So what is view spec output? So once I'm going to create this, it will go back, it's going to render the details now. Okay, because once you're going to create the spec, it's not going to create it immediately, right? So it will be in progress. So we have to show some kind of message. Once this is done, then we are going to update the status via simple polling. So let's see how we are going to do that in the next part. All right, so next, what do we have to implement? So now we are going to implement our view spec output page, where we are going to render the output. Also we have the dashboard and the notification, these three things left. But before that, let's first test it, that whether this creation is actually working or not, and what is happening here. So first of all, let's go to our network, and then I already created one, so I'm just going to use this. So I'll do feature title, let's use a description, let's copy this, text tag, we're going to use these three, complexity, let's keep medium, and then I will use as additional notes. Okay, and then let's do generate spec. So you can see that immediately created this one, so it's now generating, you can see, and its polling is happening here. Okay, so you can see, okay, you're getting, so you'll see that once this will be completed, right, so this should be getting updated from generating to success or generated. So let's see, so it's now ready, correct? So that means this is working fine. And if you go to your specs, and you'll see that you're going to get all the details, but you don't have the generated content yet. Why? Because if you remember, we decided that we are going to not render this here, correct? We are going to render this in the details page. So this is what you're going to implement as part of this, which will be your main output renderer, where you're going to render all the details. So first of all, what we have to do, so let's see here. Once I'm going to click here, so it will go to the details page. See, it should go to this page, right? So this is what you have to mention. First of all, you have to build the authenticated spec details page. This page shows one generated spec handling the generated state with lightweight polling, and renders the full structured output when the spec is ready. Full structured AI output is nothing but when you are actually getting the data or result from your OpenAI model. This is also front end only. And again, same thing I mentioned. The only thing I've added is that now this your types has user spec details and generated spec content also. Although I already mentioned, even if you're not mentioning this, it is smart enough, we'll be able to understand which types it needs to use. What are the files you have to change? Now again, this you're going to pause and don't watch this and try to see that, okay, how many pages I have to create here. Here, first of all, if you go to specs, you have this one. So on click of this, you'll go to the details page. That means details page you have to create. So that's why I mentioned that you have to create a details page, which will be a dynamic page, because this is a dynamic page, right? And these should come under your specs, and inside this you have to create dynamic page. Okay, so this is the first thing. Second, I'm also going to create a component which will only keep up my spec output, and also this component will be your spec status poller, means it's going to check the polling, and based on that it's going to update the status. How many files you are not going to change? Again, I also mentioned backend file, all the backend file you are not going to change, and all the client. Now here, if you want, you can mention all of these, but you can just clearly mention that do not change any other components which is not needed or which is not relevant to these files that you are going to create. That is also fine. But I will suggest that always mention this, that API helper files, shared type files, client CSS file, and all these files you're not going to change. This will be your page route. Okay, and then also I mentioned one very important point. Now this one, when I was creating this one using the AI tool, right, all these things. Now I'm going to tell you one thing, that when I mentioned that, okay, this is how we are going to create this, whatever I'm teaching you now, multiple times it was not giving this thing. Okay, now these you have that understanding. So what I mentioned, that let's say I'm using ChatGPT or Claude, whatever I was using, so it was not creating this one because it don't have that context. So I mentioned that, okay, if you are using params, you need to use promise. Now you might be thinking, okay, how I'm doing that? Because this one I have done maybe 100 times. So many projects I've created on YouTube also, and every other places also. So I have that idea that if you're using params and if you're not using promise, you are going to get error, or you're going to get a warning whenever you're going to run your front end. So when it was not giving, I explicitly mentioned that, okay, when you're creating this particular spec, right, you have to mention that whenever you're going to use params, you have to use promise in that dynamic route page. You're getting what I'm trying to explain. See, I know sometimes I'll be teaching a little off, but I try to go into much depth so that I can also teach you, or I can teach you that how I usually learn or how I usually interact with AI in day-to-day life, so that it will be easy for you to understand without blindly trusting what AI is doing. For example, when it created this particular file, right, it didn't created this particular section. Okay, so then I mentioned, and also it didn't mention promise one. So I mentioned that if you're not using promise, it is going to give you error. So my point of telling all of this is nothing but that I actually know that what I am doing. You are getting, I have that idea that if I don't use promise, it's going to give me error. So this is where I am talking about. This is not a vibe coding app. This is the place where you actually know what needs to be done. You are just using AI tools to make things faster. That's it. So next we have do not use older synchronous params pattern behavior auth check. Definitely you have to do that. If this is not authenticated, you are going to return to the which page? Home page. If the user exists, then you're going to fetch your spec details, right? So this will be your API path, correct? Then if you're not telling, right, you can also mention that you can go to the server directory. So let's say if you want to go to the server directory and go to your routes, go to specs route, it will be able to understand that which is your dynamic route, because in the dynamic route we have this, right? So this is going to fetch this one. So next, what do we have? If no spec is written, you are going to call Next.js not found. So this is a Next.js inbuilt one. Page layout, again, this is the basic things, like there will be a backlink to the specs page. You're going to render all of these, and this main content should depend on spec status. If the status is generating, you're going to render this component. Which component? I already mentioned there will be one more component that we're going to render, spec status poller, correct? This one, not this one. I mentioned this one right here. Where is that? I wanted to show you this one. So this is the component I mentioned. So when it will be in progress, you are going to implement this, right? If the status is failed, so you're going to render a card saying that it is failed. If this is ready, then only you are going to render this output component, this one, this component. Okay, so this is what I mentioned. And then if the generated content is missing even though status is ready, so a simple fallback card saying output is unavailable. Now these kind of things you have to have that understanding, right? Components, this is the component. This is, again, I'm going to much details that what you have to render here for this spec output component. Create a presentational component. This will be your prop, which you're going to receive from your parent component, which will be your actual OpenAI generated content. Are going to render overview, API endpoints, database schema, front-end components. Now you might be thinking from where you're getting. This is the exact structured output that we have created. Now go to your types and you can see, so this one I'm talking about. So these things I'm going to receive: overview, API endpoints, database schema, edge cases, front-end components, implementation phases, estimated effort. So this is what we need to implement here. Render in a card with a paragraph, API endpoints, render in a simple table, database schema, render one card per table, all of this much details. Okay, edge cases rendered in a number list, implementation phases, render one card per phase, and this will be for your estimated effort. What will be your spec status poller? Now this is important. This is also a client component. It's going to receive the spec ID, right? What you have to do, you're going to do a poll. Where you have to do the poll? In the same API endpoint, right? Every 5 seconds. Why you have to do client? Because this will be a client component. Okay, so once you'll do that, I also mentioned that if the status is ready, you have to do what? Router.refresh, right? So it is going to refresh the current. It's going to do a soft refresh, not a hard refresh of that page. So rules, I've added some rules that clean up interval properly, do not add toast to notification, and all of these, and same stylings rules that I've added previously. And again, scope limits or restrictions I always give, that you don't want to build any edit, delete, export, dashboard, notification, backend changes, and all of these. Okay, and then you're going to do the verification. So what will be the overall expectation? You're going to build the details page, unauthenticated user redirect to the home page, missing specs render not found. In the specs polls, you are going to do a polling of every 5 seconds. If it is ready, then you are going to render the structured output and no backend file changes needed, and update the tracker. So this will be the details page, right? We have explained each and every line. So copy this. Now let's go to create specs, not this one. This will be the output, right? So let's copy this, paste it, and also you have to create the prompts. And then we're going to copy this one, and let's go to our specs, paste it, and let's go to the prompts, not this one. We have the view specs, right? This one. Copy this and then just paste it here. So it's same thing, that follow that file and do not implement any other things, right? So now let's run it here. Fantastic. So you can see that this is now completed. So how many files it's created? So we have an ID page, right? So I don't know why this link is not coming. So let's first verify once. So we have an ID page. Okay. So here let's see first. We're getting the ID, which is the page props. Let's verify once. Okay. So it's using the promise. Okay. So this is the first thing I wanted to check. First, it's getting the users. If the user is not present, go to home page. Then fetch the spec. If it is not, then render the not found. This not found is from your next navigation. Then we have all our basic details, and then if it is generating, it's going to generate this one, and then we're going to have the spec status poller component, which this is created. So let's see. So it's going to call this every 5 seconds, and then on return it's going to clear it, right? So we don't need anything else, which is correct. If this is failed, it's going to render a card. If this is ready, then it's going to render the spec output component, right? So now I wanted to see just, okay, so it's creating the table for database schema also, and then we have the front-end components. This is which one? Edge cases and implementation phases, estimated effort. Okay, so I think everything is fine. So let's see here what is happening. Okay, so you can see that we are getting this and it's rendering here. Okay, so this is working fine. So now let's go here, let's create one more, added one more here. Let's copy this. Okay, let's copy here, let's use same, and then we're going to just add this. You can go here also, you can see it's generating. Fantastic. See what is happening, right? That's it. So it's ready now. Okay, so you can see that it's working absolutely fine. It's creating the database schema, front-end components, edge cases, implemented and phases, estimated effort. Fantastic, right? So that means this is working fine. So now we have created our list page, details page, and you can see that till this now part also we actually haven't faced that any error, almost no error, very minor things, and this is working absolutely fine. And everything depends on how you're presenting, right? So how many things are left? So one will be your dashboard component and the notification component, these two things. So let's implement this one in the next part. All right, so now we have to start working on the dashboard component, right? And these will be pretty simple. So what I have to do, right? So I've actually divided into dashboard and notification, these two part. So in the dashboard, first let's go to the backend, right? So we have to see one thing, dashboard out, right? So here what we are doing, we are just simply getting all the stats, right? How many total specs this week, most used, complexity, most used, tech stack, last generated at, all these things. So that means we are just rendering all the overview, correct? So first what we have to do, again, very important, this is authenticated dashboard page. This dashboard should show real stat from the backend, small recent specs section. This is also front end only. Also you can see that we've actually mentioned that all the current state that is implemented, and in the types we have the dashboard stat, so that also I've added here. Again, if you don't mention, still it will be able to pick it, as much I can guarantee. Here I also mentioned that this spec card already exists, and the token you don't have to use anything else, because the global.css, this is what we are going to use. Now how many files you are allowed to change? First of all, you have to create a new page. Why? Because currently we don't have any new page in the dashboard. So this will come under your client app, and then you have to create a dashboard page. And then you are also going to create a stat card component, which you are going to use in this dashboard component. What are the files not allowed to change? Again, the server files and all the other your client side files, right? Again, if you don't mention this, still it is fine. You just have to mention do not change any other front-end files until unless it's needed or it's relevant to that particular these two files. And then this will be your page route, very important, because based on this is going to create the page. And then first of all, we have to again check the auth check, right? So if this is the user is fetch the current user, if this not user if the no user is returned, redirect to the home page. If user exists, then only you're going to fetch. Okay, also you need the list of specs, right? So that is the reason I'm getting the list of specs from this endpoint also. Then we are also going to render the dashboard. So in the dashboard we have the stat card component. So you're going to create a reusable stat card which is going to have the label, value, and the helper. So what we are going to have, we are going to have a dashboard which will be title, this will be description. We are going to have the 4 stats card, right? So we have the total specs this week, most used, complexity, and last generated. If you see here, we also have the most used tech stack. If you want, you can also do that, right? Maybe let's do 5, or let's give 4, and then we'll change it. Recent specs section, you're going to render the 3 specs from the specs response. For now, if you go here, right, you have only 2, which is fine. Still it's going to render the last 2. And then for last generated, if value exists, show a simple front-end date, formatted date using JavaScript date. If missing, show no specs yet. Okay, and then again the same thing, styling rules, and then I've also added some layout guidance that how you're going to implement the page container. So for desktop 4 columns, tablet 2, mobile 1. Scope limits, again, do not build notification bell, charts, graphs, because this is a dashboard, right? So you have to mention explicitly that we are not going to implement any charts, graphs, all these things. Notification bell and final polish will be handled in the next section, which is 13b. and then you're going to verify. So what will be the expected result? Dashboard is should build the page properly, unauthenticated user redirect to the home page, and dashboard uses real backend stats, recent specs reuse spec card, and no backend file changes are needed. Okay, and then you're going to update the tracker. So these will be the things that we are going to implement. So now let's copy this. So first let's we have to copy this path also, file also. And also we have to go here. What is this we have created, man? This is not needed. Okay, dashboard page. So first let's copy the dashboard content and we'll go to the specs, paste it, and also you have to go to prompts, copy this, and then we'll paste it here. So mention that you're going to follow 13a dashboard page, and then you're not going to implement anything else. Same thing, right? There is not that much any change in the logic or how you're implementing. So let's see. Alright, so it's done. This was simple actually. So let's see what is happening here. So you can see that it's created two specs. We have the recent specs. You can also see the view, medium, most used complexity medium, last generated is this. Now I'm going to give you one homework here. So what will be your homework? In this spec, in this spec that where we have created here, you can see that we mentioned, right, we create the 4. So we have the 4 card, right? So let's see that part, this one. So here you can see that in the logic that we have written, right, let's go to the client side types. So we have one more here, most used tech stack. So try to render these also here. Okay, instead of 4, try to add one more, which is going to render that which tech stack is the most used one. So for this one, what you have to where you have to make change, you have to make change in your dashboard page here also in the spec also, that instead of 4 it will be 5, and try to see if you're able to do it or not. You don't have to make any code changes, it will be only prompt changes here. Okay, so that means this is working fine. If you click here, it will go to the specs page, go to dashboard, you're getting this. Fantastic, right? So now I think this part is completed. So let's implement the notifications one in the next part. All right, so now let's implement our notification feature, which will be actually important one. Okay, so let's see how we are going to do that. So first of all, what actually you have to do? So here notification in the sense when we're going to create the specs, right? So just like we are showing here, generating when it is in progress, so we also have to render some kind of notification here, so that once we'll click it, we can see that if it is in progress or if it is in ready. And also once we'll click on any notification or once we'll view any notification, we also mark those notification as read. And for that one also we have some routes, correct? So we'll go to notification routes. You can see that we have one read and one is to get all the notifications, correct? So now let's see how we are going to do that. First of all, you have to mention, or you have to decide that where you are going to add the notification, right? So you have to add the notification in the navbar. So that's why I mentioned that add the notification bell to the navbar and do final lightweight polish. This is the final implementation section. What is the current state? So we clearly mentioned that we have implemented everything here, right? So we have the spec details, dashboard page, everything is completed. Now we have to do first backend notification APIs exist. So you have the get notifications and patch notifications / read. So this is what we have here, this one. So first we have to mention the same thing, right? You're going to use the CSS from global.css. All right, so now this is important. How many files you're going to change? Now here you have to have that understanding. Okay, so first of all you have to create a new component. Okay, so this will be a notification bell component. If you don't have, we are going to create it. You are also going to update the navbar component. Then you have, means you're allowed, if you see that if any changes needed in this specs page component, then you will do it. And also in the dashboard component, file that are not allowed to change, again any backend files, database migration, API helpers, spec create form behavior, spec details output, render behavior, OpenAI helper, auth backend, and also very important global CSS, all this. and SADCN UI related files. First of all, what will be your implementation step? So first you have to decide that how you are going to implement. So how you are going to do that? So first of all, when we are going to click and create any spec, we need to do what? So what actually we are doing? We are doing a post API call. We are checking if it is in progress. Until unless it is progress, we are going to render something, some loader or something. If it is in ready, we are going to render the details with the status as ready. If it is failed, we are going to render a card. Similarly, when we are going to immediately this create, right, we have to do what we are going to see. We have to actually call this get notification. Why? First of all, this will be a client component. This will be to fetch notification. For this one, we are going to use the get notification because we have this, right? This one is going to list the notifications. So now this is going to do what? It's going to, we are going to do a poll of every 10 seconds. You can do in 5 seconds also. Show a bell style button with unread count. When the user is going to open the dropdown, show recent notification messages and call the patch. Okay, you're getting. So we are keeping this one simple for now. We don't have that much complication that we are going to click a notification, we are going to show the notification details, all those things. First, to create it, we are going to call the notification, we are going to get the notification. Once the user is going to click the notification, we are going to mark the notification as read. So this is what we are doing here. Update local state, so unread count becomes 0. Every time you're going to mark any notification as read, so let's say you have one notification, you have just clicked the notification, it will become 0. If it is fails, you're going to log the error and do not crash the navbar. One thing is very important, you see that how whatever you are doing, right, even if you're thinking that okay, we are just reading all of this line by line, everything is very important how you're going to mention when you're going to create any project. Even if you're doing freelancing, you can't like I can't explain enough how much this is helpful and how much these things will make your life easier. What is the rule? Keep the drop down simple, do not add any separator, do not add toast notification, do not add sound effects, do not add browser push notification. Why we are doing all of this? This is to give the restriction to the agent so that it will not act too smart and then just add some unnecessary things that we don't need. If this icon is already installed, then you're going to use the bell icon or whatever icon. You can just also mention like this, right? You can use any icon you need. Okay. Then very important, very important, you have to update the navbar, because at the end you have to render it in the navbar component, correct? In the authenticated state means when the user is authenticated. So let's see, if I now just sign out, then it should not be able to see this, right? Let's see, if I do sign out, you are getting this, and now if I go here and then sign in again, then only I'll be able to get this, correct? So I'll be able to see the notification. So that's why I mentioned that if this is authenticated, then only you're going to render it. Keep existing nav links and sign out behavior. Do not change auth logic. Unauthenticated state should not show notification bell. So that means when I'm going to sign out, I don't want to render anything here. Okay, I'll just log in once again. So this is done. Then I'll just added some like simple polish, right? Only touch the listed pages if needed. Improve the empty states and some other things. Dashboard, if there are no recent specs, ensure the section says no recent specs. Add root readme file and some styling rules here, right? So this is all about the things, right? Also I've given restriction because this is the last section, that you're not going to add any notification page, because most of the things most of the application will have a separate notification page or some drop down. On click of this, we are not going to do that. Also, we don't have any browser push notification, email notification, charts, settings, profile, billing, team, edit and delete specs, export, download, backend changes, database changes, all these things, right? And at the end you're going to verify. So what will be the expectation? First is navbar is going to build with notification bell for authenticated user. Notification dropdown can fetch the notification. Opening dropdown notification is going to mark the notification as read, and empty states is going to remain clean, right? And also no backend changes is needed. So this is what we need. So now let's copy this and let's add it here. So you're going to add in the specs and also we'll add in our prompts. Okay, and also we'll just copy the prompt and then I'll just paste it here. So what I mentioned that I can follow the last file, right? Implement this, do not add any backend changes, database, notification and all these changes, and then complete it and update the tracker. So now let's copy this and we'll paste it here. Let's see. Fantastic. So you can see that this is completed. So how many files it's created? So first let's see. So you can see that we already have this. Awesome. So you can see that we have the notification bell component, right? So this is going to fetch the notification, and here you can see that how many. So we have the 10 seconds, whatever we mentioned, and also it's going to update the notification bell. So let's copy and search here. So it's rendered here, and when it's going to render, when the user information is present, means if I'm going to sign out, that is not present. Sign in. Okay, then you're going to get this. Now these all will be marked as read. Okay, so this is done, and also it's going to just add some other improvements and also a readme file. Okay, so readme file also it's added. So with this, now this is completed, but we have to test it, correct? So let's go to specs, go to new spec, and I'm going to just add this one only for now, just to see the notification component. So add this, copy this, and then I'll just copy this one. Maybe let's change this one to React. Let's keep instead of this, maybe what we can do, right? Maybe let's do MongoDB. Let's see. And then here I'm just going to do backend validation, all of this, use mongoose. I'm just going to change this one to use mongoose. Okay, and let's do generate. So what will happen, right? We should be getting, see, immediately we got one notification here, we're getting here, and then once this will be generated, we are going to get one more. So let's open this, go to network. So it's fetching the notification. Let's wait. The moment it should be ready, right, we are going to get one more. Fantastic. So if you click here, you can see that it's now created, right? And also now if you go to view spec, you're going to get all the details, right? So you have the database schema and everything, front-end components and all of this. But the point is that this is now completed, okay? The features, whatever you implemented, but the outcome that you have to understand, that whatever things we have learned so far, that how you are going to implement things whenever you will be working with AI, how you're going to give restriction to the UI. But remember, I wanted to mention one more thing, that whatever specs that we created or features, I've added too much information. Those you don't have to do always. I have mentioned this one so many times. The specs of features that you're going to implement, that depends on the things that you're implementing. For example, you don't have to give every single details, that how your card will look, every single line. You don't have to do that. But there should be some enough information so that your agent will understand what needs to be done. Okay, and also you understand one more interesting thing, and that is the concept of the manual work, right? That whenever you're going to do any manual work, so that you can mention that, okay, this is the manual work that we have done, so that every time it's going to do that features, it will have the previous context, that okay, this manual work has been already done, I don't have to do these changes. Okay, and these prompts is for your understanding, so that you can go through. And as I already mentioned, try to add some more features to it. Okay, follow the same process, maybe try to add some delete features here. First implement the backend and the front end. So with that, now this particular project is now completed. So let me know what you think, because this is the kind of video that I created for the first time on my channel. If you all liked it, I'm going to create some more, and next time I'm going to use some more complicated features. Okay, so that's all for this particular video. I will see you in my next video. Till then, good luck and peace.